Good evening and welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. And could we have roll call, please?
Council Agency Member Martner.
Present.
Council Agency Member Costa.
Present.
Council Agency Member Lingle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Starbuck.
Present.
Mayor Chair John Lynn.
Here. Okay, oral communications for no one that's here since there's no one here. This evening we will begin with a closed session in the utility conference room, and we have 6 items on the closed session, which was why we're starting a little earlier. We have the conference with real property negotiators with regard to the property at 112 North H Street and 203 North N Street, 709 to 713 North E Street, 501 to 513 North S Street, 508 North T Street, 500 504 North T Street, Lompoc, City Negotiators, Laurel Barcelona, City Administrator, and Joseph Pannoni, City Attorney. Negotiating party, Steve Tabor, under negotiating price and terms with regard to LHCDC. Item number 2, a conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, subdivision A of section 54956.9, Pacific Western Bank, et cetera, versus Lompoc Housing Community Development Corporation, et al., case number 1389106, and City NA, et cetera, versus Lompoc Housing Community Development Corporation, et al., case number 1389696. And then conference with legal, item number 3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to subdivision C of section 54956.9, one matter regarding LHCDC. Item number 4, conference with real property negotiators, real property at the northeast corner of H and Ocean, City Negotiators, Laurel Barcelona, City Administrator Joseph Pannoni. City Attorney, negotiating parties Hugh and Janet J. under negotiation price and terms for payment. Item number 5, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision B of section 54956.9, one matter. And finally, item 6, public employee performance evaluation for the City Attorney, which was continued from our last meeting. And that's it, and we will go off to the conference room.
Mr. Mayor, and as before, on item number 1, the property at 1112 North H, and item number 4, you and Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Starbuck are going to have to recuse yourself from those.
Absolutely, and we enjoy going out and having coffee while you guys get the work done. Okay, and we'll be back.
Yeah.
Ready to go? Ready to go? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to your council meeting this evening. And we've had a closed session earlier where we discussed a number of items. We'll have a report on that. And then we had a joint meeting with the Public Safety Commission for their annual report. And we will not be going over that. However, if you missed it and you want to see it, please go on the website and tune into the to this evening's council meeting. And now we will move to the report for action taken during the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the closed sessions, there were 6 closed session items on the agenda. Number 6, the public employee performance evaluation, City Attorney, didn't occur. It may occur at the end of the meeting, depending upon the time of the meeting, or it may be continued to another date. With regard to item 1, which is the only item where there was a reportable action, the council authorized the acceptance of a deed in lieu that's been presented by the LHCDC. And a deed in lieu basically means rather than the city having to foreclose on its deed of trust for the security that it has for the Marks House, LHCDC has given a deed in lieu that the city has agreed to accept. And we received that deed in lieu signed today, late in the day, and that was following Friday. We had received a resolution, a resolution from the board, the LHCDC board, authorizing that deed in lieu. In addition, the council has also decided to continue moving forward with getting an interim provider, and as you may recall, the council previously had authorized the interim providing services from Good Samaritan, and so we are now working out the final details for Good Samaritan to take over for operation of the Marks House now that we are the owners of the Marks House. And that's all I have.
And they have the contract in their hands.
Correct.
Additionally, there is some money that was reserved for the Marks House in the prior year's Human Services budget that is available for this operation on a reimbursement basis for Good Sam in operating the Marks House. And the last step in this process will be filing the deed in lieu tomorrow with the county, which makes it all very final.
It'll get recorded tomorrow.
Yes. So, and Good Samaritan has, as I'm told, been out hiring people and getting staff organized and training because they knew in advance that they were the designated entity to take over based on our Human Services Commission's recommendation. I see a couple of you out there. Thank you for your good work. That came to a good end, and the council's approval. Did I get it all? Okay, good. And now if we could have the invocation from Peter Lucero. Could you stand, please?
Okay, good evening. My name is Pete Lucero. I need to preface this just a little before we pray, and to say that I'm honored to be here to represent the Lompoc community. What a wonderful community it is, and I'm sure you all know that, more specifically the Islamic community here in Lompoc. And saying that, I wanted to, again, prime the prayer before we do it with two instances from our book that speak to business and business practices, and then we'll pray. So please humor me and then forgive me later if you could. So in whatever business we may be, in whatever portion we do, and whatever deed we as mankind are doing together, we are witnesses thereof, and we are deeply engrossed therein, but nothing is hidden from the Lord as much as a weight of an atom on the heaven or in the earth, and not the least or the greatest of these things, but is recorded in a clear record, and this is in the chapter called Jonah, verse 61. Also, one more instance I'd like to share with you. David said, in an instance when he was arbitrating between two brothers, one had sold or one had demanded that a female sheep, be added to another brother's. And so he judged between the two of them, and then he realized that this was a test. And so this test, he understood, was being a trial. And so he asked forgiveness because he knew that all these transactions were being observed by the Almighty. And just to say that, it's the same creator that's mentioned in the U.S. Constitution that we all share. I just wanted to share that with you. So let us pray. In the name of God, cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, the most gracious, the most merciful, master of the day of judgment, you we worship and your aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those whom you have bestowed your grace, and those whose portion is not wrath, and those who do not go astray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
City Administrator's report.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, audience, and viewers, the City Administrator's status report includes 2 monthly project updates related to the Dick DeWeese Community and Senior Center and the installation of traffic signal at curb ramps at the intersection of Ocean Avenue and R Street. Senior Civil Engineer Mike Luther is available tonight to present these project updates, and I will invite him to the podium at this time. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members. I'd like to begin with the traffic signal update for the R Street intersection. On December 16th, the city provided Caltrans with a draft design, and it is currently still under review, and the city is waiting for comments to come back from Caltrans so we can proceed. Is there any questions on the signal, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. On the senior center, I had the privilege to give the council a brief tour this afternoon, so you can see the progress. But as of today, there are 14 days remaining on the current contract. At that time, the contract working days will be up. But as you can see, I believe there's probably more than 2 weeks worth of work left. But the contractor is telling me that he believes he will be ready to provide a punch list walkthrough at the end of this month, and he will be completely finished by the end of February with all outstanding items. That's his report to me. As you can see, currently they're working on flooring, painting. At the end of the week, they're supposed to be delivering the kitchen equipment, and that'll be being installed next week. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the project.
Mike, is the punch list supposed to be within their end of contract period, or is that an after end of contract punch list?
It's supposed to be within the contract time.
Okay. And the last day of the contract period is?
January 31st.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Luther, I want to thank you for the tour this afternoon. It's going to be just a fantastic center. I mean, I was a little apprehensive going over there because it wasn't complete. I was a little bit concerned just seeing, and not knowing what I was going to see, but you can tell just by walking through. They're tiling the floors right now, and most of the painting is done. It's just going to be a fantastic center, so I know the community is going to be very proud of it. And I want to thank you and your staff for keeping the ball rolling. It's nearing completion right now, and I believe we're still going to be on budget, so that's going to be nice. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anything else, City Administrator?
No other announcements, Mr. Mayor.
And okey-doke. All right, now we're going to go to oral communications, and we're going to take first. Yeah, no, you can sit back down. I'm not taking you first. There may be some people here that have some questions or discussions with regard to either the Marks House or the Bridge House. And just to make it a little easier so we can kind of get all these things together, if you'd like to talk about that subject, I'd appreciate it if you'd come up first so we could hear what you had to say and then maybe answer some questions with regard to that. I appreciate it. Come on down.
I wasn't sure of the process. Sorry about that.
No, and just so you know, you should introduce yourself.
Yes.
And you were very helpful sorting out information on the weekend, and I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Sylvia Bernard. I'm the Executive Director of Good Samaritan Shelter. I first of all want to thank the City Attorney, the City Administrator, and the City Council for your quick actions. I am absolutely thrilled to know that you have the deed in lieu. That is amazing, and information that new information that this community should be grateful for. I did talk to the county as early as an hour ago, and their process is going to be a lot longer than yours. They are talking about having to go through an RFP process. They do not have a deed in lieu, and it also has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. The Bridge House may actually be closed for 3 to 4 weeks, and that is a crisis for our community. I want to thank you so much for having the foresight to do the RFQ ahead of time, for posting that, and for having an interim plan and having a designated shelter provider. I think that you went through a fair process, and I think that the chances of us having some kind of shelter provision is going to be more realistic in this part, but that we have to remember that the Marks House only serves homeless families, and it's to date only been homeless families with women. So the concern is what happens to all the other clients that need homeless services. Good Samaritan has worked out an agreement with New Life Christian Church. This community is very blessed to have that church as a part of this community. They have stepped up and agreed to run that warming shelter through the end of this week. There's no showers at that shelter. There's no place for a homeless person to take a shower. We're trying to cut a deal with the YMCA right now to try and make that happen. But this is a crisis point. The warming shelter is primarily for those that are in need of coming out of the elements that traditionally don't get shelter. They may be still using. We typically don't do a complete assessment on them or a background check. And now we're mixing that population in with homeless families and regular homeless. And so this is an issue. And so I would hope that perhaps the city could work in partnership with the county to see if we can expedite their process as you have been able to do, and perhaps use you as the model for that, so that they can be able to quickly come up with a solution as you've been able to, being that the shelter's closed today and you already have a deed in lieu by the end of the day. I'm impressed, and you should be proud of that. You're far ahead of the county at this point, and I'm concerned about the long-term solution within this month process of however this is going to resolve itself. And hopefully Bridge House will even be able to reopen. I don't know. I don't know the legalities of what's gone on, but I just want to thank you for all of the efforts you've done. Your administration, your attorney, your staff have been great. The city council, you did take the foresight to make that happen, and hopefully we can resolve this together for the solution of both Bridge House and Mark's House, and be able to get people back off the streets. Thank you.
Don't run away. I think you might have a question or two from a council member, Sylvia. Don't go run away. And also, do you want to make an announcement about your other project that's coming along?
Yeah, the one on, which one?
The one you were out getting grant money for, and life
Yes,
was looking good.
I can make that announcement. We did receive notification last week, an approval from the state of California, that we received a grant to purchase a property owned by Frank Signorelli. It's a three-unit apartment complex. It's 3 one-bedrooms. It's actually half a block from our existing property, and we're going to use it as a second phase housing for the women and children in our program. So what happens is that our program residentially will keep them for 6 months, but then they can move with their families into these units and still stay in treatment pretty much on site within 6 months, within a half a block away. So that's exciting. During these times, it's difficult to get federal or state funding, so we're excited to be able to secure that funding and make that project happen. So we're hoping to make that happen within the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Marilyn. I do have one question. Pending the acceptance of this agreement between the city and Good Samaritan, how long do you think the layover would be to get staff in there and have an assessment of the location itself to get folks back into the Mark's House?
We have already hired staff. We actually did cross-training all day today, and we actually hired a staff person who is very familiar with Good Samaritan, is a former employee of ours, and is very familiar with our case management protocols. And so being that the facility is able to be occupied and that we have the staffing in place to make that happen, so we can make it happen within a couple days, I would imagine.
Thank you.
I do want to be honest with the city council, and I had talked briefly with staff earlier, is that the funding that has been put up by the city is not enough to cover the Mark's House budget, as you know, and it is just a fraction of that. And so what Good Samaritan has committed to the staff is that we are going to, hopefully by the end of tomorrow, come up with a realistic 6-month budget. I am personally going to go to the county and find out. They have also set aside money for Mark's House, find out what that allocation is, and then we have already solicited the private foundations to see if they will make a match on that, to see if we actually have a budget for 6 months. So at the point that we have that budget and I can go back to the city administrators, then we will sign that contract. I just don't want to sign a contract saying that it would, cost a fraction of what it would cost to run a 6-month program when it actually costs 3 times as much as that. Does that make sense? So I just want to be fair to you guys and be fair to the community by making sure that we know what the budget is, we have the funding secured, and we're opening it knowing that at least for 6 months we can keep it open. And I'm confident that together we can make that happen and that we can pull other resources as well.
Councilmember Martner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that you have talked to some of the residents on the Bridge House. Are you aware that any of those residents would qualify to go into the Mark's House once the Mark's House is open? And what I'm trying to get at an idea is how many residents, clients would you be able to place if they qualify in the Marks House, and how many will remain still in a situation where they have no place to go?
So my understanding of the research I've done, I have not been to Mark's house, but my understanding is that it is a 19-bed facility, but it has the potential of serving 21 beds. I have not pulled the conditional use permit if they have cribs, so if they have newborns. My understanding is that when we were at Bridge House, we didn't interview everybody. We were allowed to interview people from outside the facility, and there were probably 2 or 3 families. There were families with men, fathers of children, and actually I think that you may be hearing from one tonight. So that's a question. At Good Samaritan's Family Shelter, we do take in men. We allow men to live there with their children. We've never had issues with that. And so that's something that I actually posted to the administrators, and it's something that you may want to discuss. Is that a possibility? I understood that in the past that there was an agreement that could happen either in that back house where there's currently a resident manager, or it could happen in the basement, and I think that those are the logistics that we need to know. And perhaps the city, knowing that the homeless families are out on the streets, want to consider opening Mark's house for emergency shelter until Bridge House can be open only for families, and then transitioning and keeping those families that can stay and transitioning the rest to Bridge House. That would be my recommendation, and then I think that the warming shelter could probably handle the individuals that are homeless and not leave those kids on the streets in a homeless environment that's not safe. That would be my recommendation as a provider, but it would be your decision to make.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would like to make a request at this time based on this public input, and that is that can the city look into what are the conditions right now that the Marks House can accept, and is there, any interest from the council to discuss whether some new options can be looked into?
Let's ask the city attorney about what he knows about it. Do you know anything about the former contract? Or conditional use, or what would have caused that rule to be in place? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. Sorry.
Laurel, are you familiar with it at all?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not, but we certainly can look into it and advise you.
Teresa, if Dinah happened to still be here, could you ask her, please? I don't know if she's left or not. Maybe we could resolve this and see if
I just think it's a thought.
Yeah, well, let's find out why. As long as it's not within the conditional use permit for the operation of the shelter, which would be a little bit more problematic to unwind, then it would probably be a decision that we could make, and it seems like a good and viable suggestion. So don't go away, and we're going to find out. And in the meantime, let's go to the next person. Well, maybe, here's the other expert. Oh, Human Services Commission Chairman, come on down. You might know the answer to this. Do you remember there was a policy apparently that within the Marks House it was a residence for women with children primarily, except the basement and the adjoining structure? And was that a policy that the Human Services Commission established, or the county, or?
They established it themselves.
Oh.
And I just told Teresa on the way out, when I have done site visits there, which I've done many through the years, we were always informed there is a downstairs bedroom, because there's 4 upstairs and 1 down. The downstairs bedroom was available for males and a family.
Okay, so that was their in-house policy.
That was an in-house policy. It was nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
All right. Thank you very much.
But
go ahead. If you got something. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add?
More information is better.
No, it's not. I will give you any answers that you might want that I know. But I wanted to thank you for taking such swift action, and I'm very pleased to hear you had that deed in lieu of. And that was my first thing was, if you have it, is it recorded?
We couldn't record it till tomorrow morning because we didn't get it till too late today.
Anyway, and I think Sylvia alluded to the fact there is some funding available. I think you did also.
Yeah.
From not the current year.
Prior year.
But 2 years ago that was not spent, and it's still there. But the other thing I wanted to address the audience at this point is the fact that, yes, I'm so pleased with the Marks House, and I know when there wasn't a Marks House and what they did to get it here, and it took a lot of effort. I'm sure glad it didn't go down the drain. But I'd also like to make sure that the Bridge House stays open. And granted, it's a county facility, but most of the residents are residents of Lompoc City. And so, I mean, and we have always funded them through the Human Service Commission because of the fact that they are citizens, even though the facility is in the county. So,
Okay, thank you. Sylvia, could you come back, please? Can run, but you can't hide. So I think what we're hearing is that that was a policy of the prior facility, not a city policy.
Okay.
And looking up and down the dais, I don't think there's anyone here that would tell you that you can't have the policy that you have in your other facilities. Is there anyone that would, everybody's comfortable with them running it the way they run something successfully?
Okay.
So
That'd be
I don't
great.
think that's an issue for you from our standpoint.
I think that that decision will help us come up with an interim short-term plan and a long-term plan for that facility, being in light of the fact that there's so many homeless that have been displaced as a result of the Bridge House closing, as well as Mark's House. So I think that that will help with a longer-term solution.
Are there any other issues with regard to it that we could help you with other than the bigger checkbook at this moment in time? And you have a pretty good TV audience, so this is your commercial to the community too. And if you're interested in some financial help, your name and
Yes.
phone number would be a good thing to mention.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we already know that we're short on the budget in order to be able to operate that facility. And to be honest with you, we may be shorter on a budget than we know. I don't know if there's beds in there. I don't know if there's high chairs. I don't know if there's a dining room table. I don't know if there's a refrigerator. I don't know what's in those facilities, and I'm not sure anyone really does until the city has access to get in and we can go in with them. From what I've heard is that actually the facility is in good working order. I haven't seen that for myself, but I've heard that from people that have been in there as recently as a week ago. That's encouraging news. But you know, I'll give you an example, is that in Santa Maria, we had to replace all of our bunk beds within our shelter system because we, like the rest of America and the rest of the hotel chains in the world, had an issue with bed bugs. And the only way we could get rid of them is to get new bunk beds, metal bunk beds, to the tune of $50,000. That's 75 bunk beds. Raising money for that was challenging, to say the least. So getting in components of capital that are in need of being able to provide basic services is going to cost more than just an operating budget of having staffing. And so I won't know that until we get there. I know that we need funding support, and I know that that will also help the city to be able to provide those services. People can contact us on our website at goodsamshelter.net, or they can contact us at, I would suggest calling my office at 346-8185.
Slower.
346-8185. But we are going to need all the support we can get. I know that we will need the basics. If there are community churches out there that are interested in helping serve meals, if they're interested in helping with doing a towel drive or a blanket drive or pillow drive, getting the basics, feminine hygiene products, especially for homeless women, is a big need. Laundry detergent's a big need. So we are going to definitely be in need, and so I think that if there are donors out there that want to help with those basic items, that would be helpful. And as we go down the road, we're going to definitely rely on the city to try and get that message out there of how people can help, because we will need that in the process as well.
And if I can kick in, if they had something they wanted to donate with regard to that, they could drop it off on Ocean Avenue at
608 West Ocean Avenue.
Absolutely.
At Recovery Way Home, Good Samaritans project there.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, this is probably the best news I've gotten all weekend long. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, if you need any more good news, feel free to come back and talk to us.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
I just have, even though I'm very happy we're taking this action, that we'll be able to allow families in, or men and families in there as well, I have a little concern that we're going to solve the county is going to think that we've solved their problem. So we have to make this very clear that this is a temporary solution, and it does not absolve the county from their responsibilities to open up the bridge house. I don't want to go down that slope where we let them think that they're off the hook, because they're not off the hook. We still have plenty of other problems we have in this city.
I would agree, and I would encourage you as City Council, if you can, to speak to your counterparts at Board of Supervisors. I think that they need to hear that this is not a permanent solution by any means. It still mixes the populations. Even if this was the temporary solution, it still mixes the populations of the traditional homeless with those that are chronically homeless, that are the ones that should be getting services from the warming center rather than those that are trying to get back on their feet. And that's not always a positive environment for them to be in, especially if they're trying to get into recovery. So this is not a solution by any means. I agree with you. And I will also reiterate that to the county.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we just received information from the county that they have their RFP out now, and it is, the due date is 26th.
Good. So we don't have to send them a letter after all. Life is good. Sylvia, you're just doing wonders, you know? Just like that, you solved all those problems. I'm telling you. Thank you so very much. Next.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Martin. I was recently a resident at the Bridge House. I want to thank you guys for extending the stay at the warming center. That means a lot to myself and the fellow residents who were at the Bridge House. Pretty much everything that I wanted to say and had to say has been answered and covered, so I want to thank you guys a lot for having me here as well.
Thank you, and I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Next, please. Just go ahead and stand over there with him. Don't worry about it. We're not that formal.
I'm Tyke Tygeson, and I'm one of 100 people that have signed up for the archery club that is pending in Lompoc, I guess. I was just wondering what has developed in that. Have we? Is it on track for existing here pretty soon? I was wondering.
You know, Tyke, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out for you if you'll give me your phone number.
I'll leave a phone number out front here.
Perfect. You can just give it to the city clerk.
I'll give it to her. Yeah. I'm here. Tom Chamberlain, who is the archery instructor over in Buellton, and he was interested in this, and he asked me to check on it from you. And I don't know. There's nobody seems to know anything about it, and still there's land that's been allocated for the club itself. And I was wondering if you knew anything at all about it.
I recall hearing about it in the past, but I can truly tell you that I do not know the answer, but I will get it for you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing it back to the top of the list. I can tell you that there's a group that I think will get their certification in the next 2 days to provide a youth tennis program. So, okay, who's next?
Hi, my name is Michael Foley. I live here in Lompoc. I'm the executive director of the Casa Esperanza Homeless Center in Santa Barbara. I'm also the co-executive director of Bring Our Community Home, which is the countywide 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness. And I, too, wanted to just take a moment to thank you. I was able to come to the Human Services Commission and see the amazing work that the Human Services Commission did in reviewing those applications quickly and asking an amazing, great opportunity for them to ask questions and understand and make good decisions so that you could as well. So I wanted to not only thank you, but thank them, because families actually have opportunities now. There's a family that was found living behind Michael's who had been turned away, and now they have the opportunity to very quickly have what their needs taken care of. But I wanted to reiterate what Sylvia said. I was one of the folks down in Santa Barbara that responded to a hypothermia death on State Street by helping to develop the warming center component. And warming centers were not created for this. Warming centers were created for the most desperate people, the most mentally ill people, the people who won't go to shelters because of mental illness, because of fear, or because of drug and alcohol addiction, to have a place to go to be warm and nothing else, so that the next morning that they could stay alive and have another day to try again. That is not the environment that was created for the people who are in that shelter. Tonight there is a man who is living at Casa Esperanza, who is from Lompoc and a longtime resident of Lompoc. Every day at the shelter, he would get up at 2:30 in the morning to get to work in Santa Barbara at 3:30 for a temporary job that he just got. He came to stay at Casa so that he could be closer to his job, because there is no way the warming center would have worked for him. There's absolutely no way that would have worked for him. There are other people in the shelter who were in the shelter who that's not going to work for them. And then the flip could happen. You could end up creating a shelter environment in the warming center, and then the very people who on a 23-degree night need to be inside might not come inside. That's the risk that we have in not focusing attention on this. And I think it's not just an administrative thing and working with the county to get this administratively done. It's a moral thing too. I couldn't believe last night when we went to interview those folks, if we hadn't gone out last night to talk to people and we had tried to call to be able to get in, if we hadn't done that, I wouldn't have found that guy and got him to Casa Esperanza so that he could keep his job and get things taken care of. We were forced to sit outside when the temperature dropped below 50 degrees in the dark, which we didn't have flashlights, so we couldn't continue because we weren't allowed inside to do this work that anybody would do. A simple transition of people are going from one program to the next, you bring in the workers to help them, and then you invite them in. I mean, there's a moral component, and at this moment, all those people you're trying to deal with in affordable housing who could lose their affordable housing, and all of these people in shelter care, they don't have an elected member of the Board of Supervisors on this. The 4th District Supervisor has recused herself. They don't have anyone to represent them. And that's why I just want to so strongly encourage this council to communicate with the members of the Board of Supervisors to really point out how important this is to Lompoc and to get the departments moving, and also to take some moral effort in whatever is left of LHCDC. LHCDC could do two things tomorrow. They could sign the deed in lieu and deliver it to the county, and we could volunteer. I was quoted in the paper as being willing to volunteer my time to staff that shelter myself. There are tons of people who would do that. Sign that deed in lieu tomorrow, or open up the doors and let us get insurance on that property and let us provide the staffing to get it done. They could do those two things, and I just encourage you and everybody who's listening to pick up the phone and call the people and say, do it. Because people need that. That guy who should be here in his hometown, that guy needs help. And there's so many people like him, and people who are falling into homelessness in our city every single day. How many more of him are going to come along and say, go to the warming center? I just really wanted to just kind of drive that home for you, because that's the importance of it, I think, and the urgency of it. And again, thank you for all of your work.
Thank you very much. And as luck would have it, I'm going to be in a meeting tomorrow morning with all those supervisors. I'll share your message. Next.
John Beeler, President, Lompoc Homeless Shelter. I just want to say, if we could legally hand the bridge house over to the county tomorrow, we'd do it. We can't. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this subject? And then we'll go to oral communication for all other subjects.
Carol Benham, Lompoc resident. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I too want to say I'm very glad to hear that the city did get the deed in lieu for Mark's house, and very soon Good Samaritan will be allowed to actually enter the property and look at it. I too am glad that the city undertook the process of issuing an RFQ so that some preliminary planning could be in place when the inevitability of LHCDC not being able to provide services occurred. I would actually like to, with those thanks to the council, I'd like to thank and acknowledge some other people, specifically Good Samaritan, for being ready, for going above and beyond what has been an incredibly difficult situation. I specifically want to thank both Good Samaritan and Mike Foley from Casa Esperanza. Mike told you a little bit about what occurred last night, but I was going to tell you, so I'll tell you a little bit anyway. A group of professionals from Good Samaritan and Casa Esperanza went to Bridge House at 5 p.m. when the doors opened. They did this on their own initiative so that they could speak to residents and assess their needs, their conditions, their family situation, so they could provide and plan for services. This group of trained professionals was initially told they had to leave the property. Only after some negotiations were they told that although they could not enter the building, they would be allowed to stand outside in the dark. I was told it was 48 degrees in order to conduct a 10-minute client intake assessment. God bless that group of people that did that last night and tried to do what LHCDC clearly refused to do, and in fact cold-heartedly tried to prevent from even happening. Thank you, all of you. I want to thank Jonathan Martin and his family for speaking up, for seeking a city council member to talk to, for calling the Lompoc record to try to shed some light on the conditions that have been allowed to exist at Bridge House for some time, and that LHCDC has taken really very clear efforts to hide. Thank you, Jonathan. I just want to add a note that it seems as if the way LHCDC handled this over this weekend by giving a 72-hour notice on a 3-day holiday weekend, no public announcement, sort of telling a few people here and there, and they made this announcement to the Bridge House residents without offering help, without giving phone numbers, without giving guidance. To me, that seems like malice aforethought. I want to second what some other folks have said. If this council could act with the Board of Supervisors to really try to remove every last vestige of control LHCDC has over this community and its residents, because this weekend they proved once again they do not have the greater good of this community in mind. They did not have the greater good of the residents in the forefront. In fact, tried to stop people who were trying to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm Ernest Curvin. I'm an urban missionary from the Presbyterian Church on the Hill. And one of our mission people, we have a program called Mission on Our Doorstep, and we give a lot to the Bridge House and to the Mark House. I was a former investigator with high crime murder cases all over the country. I'm familiar with investigating. But the thing is that there's a budget, and if it's $5,000, that's $25,000 a month for both the Mark House and the Bridge House, and that would be $250,000 on 10 months, right? So I mean, that's a lot of money. But anyway, I called Jeannie Begley at the Catholic Charities, and asked her, I told her what was going on, and she said, well, she went over there, and it was locked tight. I said, okay. So I went over, and there were moving people there. They were moving all the stuff out, spoons, beds, everything, gone. And I don't know that it was some church. I hope it wasn't the Good Samaritans that were doing that. I have not a clue about Good Samaritans. And that is just uncalled for. I mean, nothing we can do because the one that's in bankruptcy, they're entitled to it, I guess. I didn't know they were entitled to all the dishes and all the beds and all we gave so many things to the Bridge House and the Mark House. And there was some corruption there and discrimination, and I have people that would come and testify to that effect. And tomorrow at 8 a.m., the Ministerial Council is going to explore this, and I don't know anything. These people didn't seem to be from Sunset. There's some other place that is on H, and I think it's Chestnut or something, that Achievement House or whatever it is. And they said they were going to take it there. Well, I didn't see anything there. I'll check it in the morning, but it just didn't seem right to me at all. And one of our missionaries, Kim Cadre, who is for the Relay for Life, she's also a missionary, and she went over there and she had to make an appointment. The woman wouldn't see her, or whatever her name is, Casey or something like that. Make an appointment, yeah, because of all the stuff that went on there and the discrimination against white people, which was really awful. I mean, goodness gracious. So that is what I'm reporting at this point in time.
Thank you very much. And you have that phone number I gave you to call with regard to that.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to speak on this subject? Okay, now we're going to shift gears. Thank you for waiting patiently. Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Ken Austini, Lompoc Chamber of Commerce. I'd just like to thank you, based on the conversation I just heard, for acting swiftly to help take care of people in our community who are in need. It's an important time of year, a difficult time of year, and thank you for taking swift action to help those folks. I know it's much appreciated. A couple things going on with the chamber. Some good events happened during December. Some of you are probably familiar with the Trees for Troops program that was sponsored by Santa Barbara Bank and Trust. We helped them work to give away 75 Christmas trees to military folks who one parent or the other was serving overseas somewhere at this point. So 75 trees. There were snacks and treats and all those kind of things. So it was a good program. I'm not sure if any of you were there. I think, Mayor, I think you came to that, didn't you?
No, I missed that one. I was at the other three.
But it's a great event, and every year Santa Barbara Bank and Trust does that. Also, the bike giveaway that the Village Dirtbags do, they gave away over 100 bikes again this year, custom fit, per the military child, again, who has a parent who's overseas, deployed at the time, all the way from fitting the bike, custom fit to each child's need, fitting a bicycle helmet for that child, and then having pictures taken with Santa Claus and cookies and all that kind of stuff that goes along with that. So a lot of very, very excited and happy kids. So a couple of great programs that went on. Also, a couple ribbon cuttings we held during the month of December. A couple of businesses actually that moved. The box shop moved from East College Avenue down to the corner of H and Pine, and I know that Bob there is very excited about his new location. He had a nice mixer there, and he's now right on H Street where a lot of businesses want to be. And again, I know some of you made it to the TNT Sweet Retreats mixer and birthday party that was held, and ribbon cutting all in one. Gosh, that was the biggest I've seen. And I know that Teddy's really excited. Boy, if people had as much enthusiasm as that young man has about things in this community, we'd be doing awesome. So that was a great event, and he's excited about doing it again next year. So combining his birthday party with another mixer. I also attended the co-op meeting on Friday. I'm not sure if any of the council members were able to attend that on Saturday. There was 2 parts to that. So you did? Okay, good. I'm excited to hear the rest of the results of that, because I only got to hear, be involved in part of that. So I think the co-op group is headed in the right direction to help get some co-op businesses started in our community. I think there's some great opportunities to do that. So I'm excited about that. Also on the 25th of this month, the Chamber will be holding a joint luncheon with the Santa Maria Chamber at Vandenberg Air Force Base Club. Hopefully you've heard about that. If you haven't and you'd like to attend, there's still time tomorrow to give us a call and sign up for that luncheon. The new wing commander, Colonel Armano, is going to be the guest speaker. She'll just be taking command that Monday. So good opportunity. We already have 55 people from Lompoc signed up. I'm not sure what Santa Maria has, so again, if you'd like to attend that, please give us a call tomorrow. And I'd like to thank Teresa for changing the start time of our first Economic Development Committee meeting to 2 o'clock so we can get done with that luncheon and still make it in time to be here for part of that. And I know some of the people attending that luncheon will also be part of the Economic Development Committee, which I'm excited to be a part of also. So let's see, what else do I have? Semi-annual report came to the city this week. Well, Laurel, hopefully you've gotten that already. Yes. It was sent over this week, and hopefully all council members will get a copy of that. You should. We've asked that. And I know that I sent out copies of the Chamber strategic plan to all of you. Please, if you have questions, comments, give me a call, come by my office, visit anytime, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you and go over what we're trying to accomplish at the Chamber. So that's all I have for now.
Any questions?
Good job.
Yeah, 7-Eleven ribbon cutting Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did it.
You did it. I was somewhere else.
Yeah, we got that one. And the Saturday workshop for the co-op, that narrowed the original list to 4, which they are now doing more in-depth research on.
As far as the businesses that they're looking at?
That they would be looking at.
And I was involved more in the process as far as how they would work as an organization on Friday. So, but that's all come together. Well, good. I mean, it's exciting.
They're a year into it and a ways up the road, and the gal from the state organization said, "Wow, you guys are really moving fast. So we're doing real well."
Well, good.
So that's a good thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Who else would like to talk about something?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Schmidtke. I live here in Lompoc. I want to talk on several subjects. First of all, the LACDC really ought to meet the grand jury. Anyone in charge there, anyone running anything for them, should be looked at very carefully. An opinion, I don't know these folks, but I know the results of their work. I've heard about some of it here tonight. Nextly, we have a big problem here with repossessed single-family dwellings and other buildings. Banks are foreclosing all over this country and in our city and in our county. They're doing that. They say, okay, get out. It's ours now. And they leave it there at that. We need either a city or county ordinance or both, requiring the institutions that repossess these places to maintain them just like they were being lived in. Not board up the windows, but repair the windows. Not let the lawn die, but water the lawn and keep it green, just like when the people lived there, when they could afford the house before the economy closed in and they lost everything that the bank now owns. I suggest that we could do this through both city and county ordinances, requiring the banks to maintain these properties. I'm sure our city attorney could come up with the proper wording for that, so that when you drive through a neighborhood in this town, if the houses have been repossessed, you couldn't tell it. All you could see is maybe a for sale sign, but not the fact that it was empty. And I mean maintaining the mini blinds, everything, just like people lived there. And they would be also responsible for any extra patrol required to keep squatters out, etc. That would maintain our city. Thank you.
Thank you. We're involved in a property, and I'm trying to think of the address. It's in the 400 block of O Street that was, and so I'll explain the process to you. It was foreclosed on by Fannie Mae, and squatters came in. The police department cited them and chased them off. And then stuff started accumulating in the yard, so then code enforcement got involved. And then the next step was the city attorney's office got involved and after numerous phone calls, got somebody at Fannie Mae who then, after getting a number of phone calls, assigned it to someone locally who is now unwinding the mess. But probably the most important thing is if you see a house like that that's sinking into the mud, to let one of us on the council know or let the code enforcement officer know. And we have a procedure in place to go forward, but sometimes we just don't see them. And that one, someone emailed me about it, and then I drove by and looked at it and went, well, that's kind of different. So it's not fixed yet, but we're gaining on it. Another thing, the shopping cart company that picks up shopping carts has now, we've chatted with them a bit, so if shopping carts are accumulating in your neighborhood, if you would call Carol Smith, she would be happy to give you the phone number here at the city to talk to the shopping cart people. They're here every other day, and they really want to do a good job, but they need our eyes and ears. And that came out of this same one. Who's next? Dwayne?
Mayor, Council, and Dwayne Holmdahl, and local residents. I'm not going to give the speech out of this book, but what it is, it's a list of the 5,675 wines that was at the San Francisco Chronicle wine judging, where I was 2 weeks ago judging wine, 135 tastes a day. Santa Barbara County had we had 1,726 wineries from 26 states. Santa Barbara County was well represented. The Santa Rita Hills was well represented. And all the way down we had the Hubers and Flying Goat and Sanford and Benedict and others. And even Fess Parker, which is over in Santa Ynez, his wine comes out of the Santa Rita. My whole thing on thinking that it's a positive because it is one of the things that's still growing. We had 5,000 wines last year. We had another 600 more this year. The year before that, when I started judging 7 years ago, we had 3,200 wines. So wineries are growing in California and nationwide. They know the Santa Rita Hills appellation. They roughly know where Lompoc is because a lot of them have seen sideways. So, and I always remind them, where the different events are. Good, better, and different. At least you get your name out there. You can't knock something that's free advertising. One of my comments is that Lompoc, along with the chamber, is going to have to say the Santa Rita Hills is part of the Lompoc Valley. Because people from, the judges I had from New York, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and also Washington, Oregon, they all know about the Santa Rita Hills. They all know the quality of Pinots and other wines that come out of there. So when we're talking about something that's still growing, it's still the true only industry that's growing in Lompoc. You go back into that, they're still bringing in wine. We got new wine tasting rooms in the ghetto. We got new wineries coming in. And in the economic development, unfortunately, you do have Steve Pepe, who is on that commission, which will do an excellent job, and he knows how to do it. And you got to remember the wineries and the wine production in the Santa Rita Hills comes to Lompoc to buy. They're not going to Santa Barbara. They're not going to Santa Maria, as long as that quality is here. When Home Depot was built, that was the greatest thing that could have happened because the wine industry drives in, buys it, and takes it back out. So they're an economic factor. Even though they're not in the city limits, are bringing money into the city. And as we look at down the road, as everybody wants to keep changing the idea of what Lompoc is. Lompoc is an agriculture community. It started out that way, and it still is, and still bringing in. You've got not as many vegetables, you got not as many flowers, but you got wine grapes. When you plant wine grapes, if people don't realize it, they're there for 25 to 35 years. It isn't something you're going to take out the next year and put something else in. So that's why as we look at our economic development, look how that can bring it in. Then, of course, you got Hancock coming in with their process and some others. So all those can be tied in your economic development. But I just wish the city, and along with the chamber, I haven't had a chance to talk to them, is utilize the Santa Rita Hills appellation and have that part of our advertising scheme, because people do know it. When I talked to the gentleman who's from New Orleans, and he knows where it's at. He's been here tasting. I had a gentleman from New York. He makes wine up in Northern California. He takes it back there, but he also knows where Lompoc is. He also knows about the ghetto. And then Playboy Club, that gentleman who does all the cooking and handles all that information at the Playboy Club, he knows it. He loves it here. He loves the quality of wines in the ghetto. He's been here. I've had him a couple, 3 times in here. And so it's something you got to always remember. Don't forget, that's what we have, and that's bringing people to town. Also, if you look at what the TNT, that's also bringing people to town. So if you tie them all together, you got people coming into town doing things. They can drink wine, they can eat, and they can also buy stuff at TNT. I think we've got a lot of things going for us. We just cannot forget what we have as a positive. I know we had a lot of tough things about it today, but just think of the positives. Like I say, this is what I did 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing no one rise, we'll close oral communication. We'll come back to the council for the consent calendar. Council, item number 3 on the consent calendar has been pulled at this time. And so we have the approval of the minutes for January 3rd, the approval of expenditures, payroll for $1,133,000, 2 expense vouchers totaling about $1.2 million. I will be abstaining from check number 30389 for Smitty's Towing. And again, I try to read all the check vouchers, but if there's one in there that I'm related to, I abstain in advance. And then we had manual checks for $1,484,000. We have item number 4, the final acceptance of project number FY09S-8, the bicycle transportation account striping, signage, and signal detection, which was a project brought forward by our Public Works Department successfully. And those are the items on the consent calendar. Any items that a council member would like to have pulled, or are there any questions? Seeing no lights, I would accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So move.
And a second.
Second.
And is there any further discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0.
Follow my lead.
And now we'll be conducting a public hearing on item 5, and presenting will be Lucille Breeze. Lucille?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This item is an appeal submitted by Pacific West Communities of the Planning Commission determination of December 14th, 2011. The Planning Commission denied a proposal to change the construction phasing of a previously approved development, CUP 0805, from a single phase to a 3-phased project. The project is located at 1420 East Ocean Avenue. The recommendation to the council is to hold a public hearing, consider the material presented in the staff report and presented by the public, and to take one of the following actions. Either grant the appeal and approve the proposal to change the construction phasing from a single phase to a 3-phase project, or to uphold the Planning Commission decision of December 14th and deny the construction phasing by directing staff to prepare and return with a resolution delineating the findings that the council makes, or to provide alternative direction. The project background was outlined in the staff report. The previous approvals were noted. The land use entitlements remain in place for this project. The conditional use permit is approved, as is the vesting tentative map. The request before the Planning Commission was to allow the construction of the project to be phased, and that was what the Planning Commission denied. The Pacific West communities filed a timely appeal requesting that the council uphold the appeal and approve the proposed construction phasing. The phasing was described in the written appeal and shown in the site plan that was attached to the Planning Commission staff report. On December 14th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and took public testimony, adopted resolution number 711, denying the request for the construction phasing. The Planning Commission staff report and the background material, including the minutes of the meeting and the adopted resolution, were included for the council's review. The zoning ordinance section 17.006.030 provides the authority for the council to affirm, reverse, or modify the decision of the Planning Commission. Supplemental information has been presented and provided to the council. We provided 4 sets of supplemental information. With the staff report, there was a letter from Barbara Macri-Ortiz, the attorney representing Pacific West Communities. A second set of supplemental information included a letter from Robert Wyckoff supporting the project and the CEQA document for the original proposal. The third set of supplemental information was 7 letters from businesses that had worked with Pacific West Communities on the Rancho Hermosa affordable housing project in Santa Maria. Those letters were in support of the Cypress Court project. The 4th letter came forward today, or the 4th supplemental information. That was a letter of opposition from Lompoc resident Mrs. Plo. There was also a memo that was distributed to the council tonight, and that memo was a staff analysis of comments that were contained in the correspondence from Ms. Ortiz, and I'll just briefly go over that so that if the council has not had an opportunity to read it in depth, we can go over those items. The correspondence was basically directed to the council, and it was a request that the council consider the appeal and the fact that the applicant was proposing to construct the building pads and the infrastructure for the entire development, but only to construct the residential buildings. And she discussed the fact that the Planning Commission had not changed any conditions, or changed minimal conditions. The conditions that were changed, there were 4 specific conditions that were changed. Those were identified in the staff report, and the item was returned to the Planning Commission even though the applicant had requested staff level approval. The reason that it went to the Planning Commission was that there were items when a subdivision map is reviewed that needs to be reviewed again by the Planning Commission to assure that all of the appropriate conditions are placed on that particular item. The project is located in a commercial office zoning district, and the purpose of that section is to allow commercial offices that are in proximity to residential districts. The CO does, however, allow multiple family residential if with a conditional use permit granted by the Planning Commission, which was achieved and which the applicant does hold. The original Planning Commission conditional use permit was for a larger project, and that happened in 2008. There was an appeal that went to the council. It was approved in 2009. The applicant came back in 2010 and requested a reduction in size to the project. That item additionally went to the Planning Commission, was denied by the Planning Commission, came forward to the council, and the council approved the smaller project. The Planning Commission adopted resolution number 711, based on the finding that the request is inconsistent with the intent of both the general plan and the zoning ordinance, in that the primary use of the district is to support commercial activity, and that the only appropriate phasing would be for the commercial element to be built first and the housing to be in a later phase. The letter from Ms. Macri-Ortiz correctly states that the uses permitted in the CO, commercial office zone, are not limited to commercial uses, and that the grounds for denial of a density bonus project set forth in the government code do not include the grounds stated by the Planning Commission. Nothing in the Planning Commission resolution or the Planning Commission discussion of the item suggested that the Commission was discriminating against the project based on the method of financing or because the development is intended for occupancy by persons and families of very low or moderate income. The question before the Planning Commission was simply the phasing of the project. There were some additional questions that arose regarding the subject, which I would like to address. In 2009, as I stated, the Council did override a Planning Commission decision to deny the project, and the Council did approve it. That was based on the fact that the project was found to meet the city requirements, and that project then did receive city approval and has land use entitlements. The applicant the attorney states that preventing the construction of the state density bonus project would violate the state density bonus law as well as the Housing Accountability Act. And the item to keep in mind in addressing this is that the application before the council is one of phasing. The land use entitlements are in place, so there is no violation. The applicant could apply for building permits and complete the entire project at one time. The additional issue is that let's see. If the council were to consider a denial of or to reject the appeal, we would need to have some findings that were based upon the impacts that the phasing would have, and that would be part of the council discussion in reviewing the materials that's presented. And if it were a negative impact, that would be something that could be used as a basis. Then there's been discussion of deadlines on the phasing of the commercial project, which would be phases 2 and 3. Placing some sort of a deadline or a time limit on that type of activity could be done. However, once the residential were constructed and if the applicant did not meet the deadline, unless there was some sort of a financial penalty that the applicant had agreed to or that had been in place, it would be difficult to implement some sort of condition such as that. And regarding the City of Lompoc regional housing needs, or the RHNA, we have a certified housing element which the council adopted in October of 2010, and that is the only element that the state actually does review and certify. And the requirement is to have adequate land that is zoned and available for housing to meet our regional needs allotment. And we have been found and we have analyzed and shown that we do have sufficient land that is available for the planning horizon, which is in our housing element horizon covers January of '07 through June of 2014. So we are compliant there. We are going to be working on new housing numbers in the next couple of years, but at this time we are consistent with what we need to do. And there was another statement that the Planning Commission action could have violated the state housing discrimination law. However, the land use entitlements, again, do remain, and it was only the phasing that was not allowed to move forward. So it does not violate any state laws at this point. And that completes my staff report, and I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Breeze, if I can capsulize what you just told us, you're telling us that your report, you're telling us that there, in your opinion, there's nothing inconsistent with the Planning Commission's decision. The Planning Commission's decision you cannot find any fault in. Is that what I just heard?
What I said was that
I think that question would better be given to the city attorney, please.
It's ultimately the decision of the city council as to whether or not, maybe a better way to think of it is, the planning commission decided what they decided, but now that it's before you, the planning commission's decision really is something that you can consider, but it's not something that's a precedent or something that you have to follow, because it's now a new item before you. It's as if the planning commission didn't take any action. So if you feel that there are findings that are supportive of denying the appeal, then we should discuss what those findings are. The finding that the Planning Commission provided, as Ms. Breeze said, it appears to be the finding appears to be inconsistent with what the zoning provides, because the finding is there's an inconsistency between this use and zoning, but actually there's not, because multifamily residential use is permitted with a CUP.
Okay.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for your presentation. So I wanted to confirm and restate, during the commission meeting, a discussion by Commissioner Griffith was that Lompoc did not meet the housing needs assessment, regional housing needs assessment, or its share, excuse me, of that assessment. Or she had some concern as to meeting that need, and she supported this project as allowing us to meet that need. However, what you've just stated, and I just wanted to confirm, is that in fact we do meet our share until 2014 of that regional housing needs assessment.
We do meet the state requirement to have adequate land properly zoned and available for the construction of affordable housing.
Thank you.
You mind? And Joe and I sat and talked about this twice because I just had trouble getting my brain wrapped around it. So, Joe, could you give the little bit longer explanation of how this is kind of a whole new thing and what we're really here? I mean, twice in the past it's been approved on a non-phased basis, but this is different in that it's phased because.
As Ms. Breeze has indicated, one of the items that was approved as part of the process was a subdivision map. And unless when the subdivision map goes for approval, phasing is part of that subdivision map application, in order for the phasing then to occur, the property owner applicant has to come back to the city and ask for a modification to the approvals to allow phasing. That's why this project went to the Planning Commission in the first place. So really what's before you, and that's the only thing that went to the commission, was the idea of phasing. So before you this evening is an appeal of an action denying the phasing. So the only thing you have before you tonight is whether or not you think the phasing is appropriate for this project. It's not a discussion on the benefits or burdens of the project, whether you like the design or don't like the design. I'm not suggesting you have those feelings. I'm just trying to fill the whole plate here so that we're clear. It's not whether you think the project design is good or not good, whether the use is good or not good. As Ms. Bree said, that entitlement stands. The only thing that was being requested was phasing. So your analysis needs to be on what impacts you think will result from the phasing that would either not be able to be conditioned so that those impacts could be taken care of, or if they can't be taken care of, then you would decide that you don't think that phasing should go forward and approve the phasing, and therefore you would, although you'd be upholding the Planning Commission decision, we would probably come back, not probably, we would come back to with findings that are focused on the phasing, not on anything else.
Okay, so what we're considering then is the impacts that the phasing would have versus the impacts that not phasing it would have, and if in fact there are impacts, whether or not those can be mitigated by conditions. Am I going down the right road?
If I may, what you'll be looking at is whether or not phasing causes some impacts that haven't yet been mitigated.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Councilmember Starbuck, go ahead.
Ms. Breeze, real quick, I just had a question. But any of these conditions for phasing are not part of a CUP, right?
The conditions for phasing are part of the CUP. What they become is additional conditions in addition to what was imposed with the CUP.
So what were the conditions listed on this one?
These conditions were simply to ensure that because the residential will be built out, there will be 2 paths that will be left. All of the infrastructure and all of the utilities will be in place. And one of the conditions is that those 2 paths where the commercial will be future building, those paths will be treated in a way that they are aesthetically pleasing with landscaping, and additionally, and most importantly, that they're safe so that there are no exposed utilities, any piping, anything that could cause any kind of a safety hazard to the public on those 2 paths. And additionally, we did put in a condition because the project, the Colt buses have changed their line and their actual routes around that site. The original CUP required that there be a bus stop, and that was removed because it's no longer necessary, and that was just part of the review that was done by staff. So there were a couple of cleanup items like that.
But technically, on future CUPs, you couldn't put a time limit on phasing then, could you?
We would generally not put a time limit due to the fact that the difficulty of implementing it.
And I guess I'm unclear with regard to the parking lots and the curb and gutter and all that. Is that included in the residential phase, or is that some of it is in one phase and some of it's in the other?
The project applicant has said that everything, all of the parking lot, all of the infrastructure, everything that has to do with the site will be included in phase 1. The only thing that will not be included will be the construction of those buildings.
But the utilities will be to the pad edge?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Lucille at this time? Thank you. And now I invite the applicant to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council members. My name is Shellen Rodriguez with the Pacific Companies, or Pacific West Communities. I'm a project manager there. Thank you for hearing this appeal this evening. I've been up here before, as we just heard from Lucille, and thank you for the very good summary that explains kind of where we've been with this project. I do want to take just a few moments to kind of go through what the project is for those new council members who may not be quite as familiar with some of the folks who have been here a little longer. Cypress Court, that's a rendering that you see there. Pacific West Communities, we're the developer, and we're partnering with the Housing Authority of the County of Santa Barbara. Let's make sure I can do this here. So we, just a quick background, we're a full-service affordable housing developer. We finance affordable housing, that's kind of our core strength, and we form partnerships with local agencies, state finance agencies, and the federal agencies, for not only for financing, but also through entitlement phases and through completion. The company I work for has a very strong history of success. We have nearly 90 affordable housing developments, most of which are here in California. We've recently completed the Rancho Hermosa project in Santa Maria. We also have another development there that we partnered with the Housing Authority on a number of years ago that we'll hear more about later on in the presentation. But we have a strong history of success. We do affordable housing, and we do it well. So Cypress Court, this project, like we heard, has been in the docket since 2008 is what I was reminded of, much before Pacific West was involved. But we've been involved since the spring of 2010 when we went to Planning Commission, and then it was approved here at Council in July for 60 affordable units, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The rents of those units were going to serve folks at 60% of the area median income of the county, which right now is about $36,000 and some change for a 2-person family. There's also 2 commercial buildings included with that mixed-use development. One building's a smaller building along Ocean at about 2,500 square feet, and a larger building at 12,000 square feet. And then, like we just heard, the Planning Commission recently denied the phasing of the project last month. Just to remind folks where we are, here's the site, and it's currently vacant. That's about a year old. It's a little over 2 acres. Just to give you a better understanding, and you can see our site plan overview here, in between Cypress and Ocean along 7th, to get you acquainted with the site. A little better look. What we're talking about, our buildings, you have a large residential building with the 60 units. This is the 12,000 square foot commercial building, and here is the smaller 2,500 square foot commercial building. This is the proposed residential elevation. Piker Group is our architect that's working on the project, and they've been involved from the beginning. This is the elevation here. There we go. So as Lucille discussed, the phasing is the issue at hand, and it's a extraordinarily important issue to our project, and it ties into the financing, and I'll try to give you a quick summary of why it's so important. But the phase 1 that we're proposing is the 60 units of senior housing. That total development cost is $12.5 million, roughly. We've received low-income housing tax credits from the state committee. That is a highly competitive source of funds, and it produces nearly $9 million in tax credit equity for this particular project. And that's, again, just for the residential. None of that money is available to spend on a commercial development. When you get those tax credits awarded, you are required to begin, or at least by pulling building permits, and in this case, that requirement is March 26th of this year. So the clock is ticking, and if we don't meet that requirement, we may not have access to those highly competitive tax credits. We'd lose our equity. Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the commercial building as I said, we don't have access to that money, that low-income housing tax credit allocation. That's financed on the commercial market, and we do have interested buyers. We're having discussions with them, right now. But given that the site is vacant, it's very difficult not only to market it, but also to finance it in this economy. So what we're hearing, and I actually have some letters from a number of local banks, 3 local banks, is basically saying that financing a commercial site at this point is nearly impossible. There's a very high vacancy rate, as you all know, of commercial properties. But when there's a successful project on the site, along with 60 houses, essentially a market, at least at some level, it's a much easier site to market to commercial uses, and also a much easier site to finance, especially with our utilities being on site, which is about a $200,000, roughly $200,000 investment that we're making to the future of those commercial pads. So just to review, Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, I don't think that we have any strong desire as to whether or not Phase 2 or Phase 3 needs to move forward first. I think, if we were able to get the buyer to get financed, we would move forward with whichever one we could. So the Phase 1 improvements, I think Lucille covered it, but just real quickly, the senior units, on and off, all the on and off site improvements, the building pad prep, all the on-site parking, all the site landscaping, and the commercial pad areas would be hydro-seeded so it wouldn't look vacant, and the utilities would be provided. So you see Phase 2 and Phase 3 are the commercial spaces and the associated landscaping. So as we heard, the Planning Commission denied the project in December, and it was denied based on the general plan and the zoning, which we heard is not entirely accurate in the sense that neither the general plan nor the zoning ordinance dictate the order of development. And it does allow, with the CUP, it does allow a strictly multifamily residential use, which is what we have, the CUP. So I want to explain some of the benefits of phasing in the sense that the 60 units would move forward almost immediately. Obviously, the site's vacant right now, so this, I think, would be an improvement to have some development in what I think is a very beautiful multifamily complex. There's the idea that it would enhance and revitalize the neighborhood. I think it's a great mesh with the new hospital, right? That's kind of kitty corner from the site. And it also, lastly, and I think probably most importantly, provides economic stimulus to this community, not only in impact fees and plan check fees, but also, and the slide got a little cut off there, but it creates demand for goods and services because residents are spending less of their money on housing and more of their money in the community. And I'll show a couple slides that I'd like you to bear with me and try to work with me and follow me along here. So in the sense that it creates jobs, this study was done, it's a national study, it's a couple caveats, it's a national study done by the National Association of Home Builders in 2009 and 2010. And it takes a look at how affordable housing creates jobs in local communities. And it was based, these particular numbers are based off a 100-unit multifamily property. But as you can see, this first column is for a tax credit property, low-income housing tax credit property. The second highlighted column is for senior tax credit property, which we're developing. And then the last one is for market rate apartments. And it says that jobs created directly and indirectly by new construction, there's about 75 from a senior project such as ours, and a 100-unit multifamily development. 39 jobs are supported by locally earned wages or induced job creation, and then ongoing job creation about 32, supported by households occupying new homes. And what I think is really important to point out here is that there's actually more jobs, ongoing jobs, produced by a senior tax credit project than family, and the same number as a market rate apartment and a senior tax credit project. And that's because of this quote on the side here that just simply says, older adults are more likely to spend their income locally, particularly when Medicare payments for health services are taken into account. So folks living here will have more money to spend in your community. This is just a quick slide. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but it talks about these direct and indirect jobs. This brown is construction jobs. Obviously, the bulk of those are created during construction. The second one is jobs supported by spending locally earned wages or induced job creation. They're kind of spread pretty diverse across the board, as are those ongoing jobs that extra income that households have create. So there's a diversity of jobs here. It's not just construction over time. So our request is to grant the appeal and approve the proposal to allow the construction of the Cypress Court project, which was CUP 0805, to a three-phased project. And I think that will be leveraging a source of funds that is a very competitive source of funds to this project, and allowing seniors in the community who need affordable, safe and stable, affordable housing to have a great place to live here shortly. And the commercial piece, I think, will happen soon after. You know, if you build it, they will come. And we're very confident that not only as the market starts to speed up, but also as you see great progress on the site, we'll be able to introduce a couple commercial buildings there. So lastly, I kind of started off by talking about our partnerships. So I wanted to introduce Mr. Lamont, who is the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the County of Santa Barbara, to talk about some of our previous developments.
Okay. Good evening. Fred Lamont, Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the County of Santa Barbara. Sheldon's presentation was a lot of numbers and a lot of words. I wanted to show you a couple of pictures. The Housing Authority's had two previous affiliations in partnership with Pacific West. That's the Housing Authority and our development arm, Surf Development. Both of them have resulted in very visible projects in Santa Maria. Obviously, Cypress Court is in a visible area. I know it's important to the city because it's in an entryway that everybody's going to see, and you want something to be very pleasing. This was our first association. You said press this one, right? One on the right, got it. This is Ted Zenit's Gardens in Santa Maria, which we, in conjunction with Pacific West, built several years ago. It's visible from the 101, particularly as you come in south into Santa Maria. We get calls almost weekly from people wanting to buy one of those market rate condos. I say, sorry, they're not market rate condos, they're low income tax credit housing. And our second project with Pacific West, we just completed 2 months ago in Santa Maria, Rancho Hermosa. It's very visible from Broadway as you go up Broadway into Santa Maria. If you go just past what used to be the Hiking Viking car dealership, which is now under new ownership, you cannot miss Rancho Hermosa. It's 47 units of low-income tax credit housing for formerly homeless families. Both of these are showpiece properties, and we expect Cypress Court to be more of the same. Thank you.
Is that it? That's all you have? Okay. Shelley, could I ask you a question? Of the 90 projects that you have done, how many other projects have you done where there is a commercial component combined with it?
I'll be honest, I don't have the exact number on the top of my head.
In a general sense.
Roughly, it's becoming more and more popular, especially kind of less popular in the last year or two, but more, it was very popular from about 2003 when the market was really hot, 2003 to about 2008 or 9. I would say, right now we have at least 4 that we're working on with commercial components, and I'd venture to say maybe 15% of those have some level of commercial component.
Okay, let me come around a little tighter. A commercial component of a similar size.
They would all be in a tax credit development. There's only kind of one way to do the commercial component. Sometimes it's in the same building, but oftentimes it's in a adjacent building like we're proposing here.
But in terms of square footage, they're all fairly similar.
Yeah, this one's probably a little bit larger than typical, yeah.
So what would a typical one be? I'm just trying to get my brain wrapped around this.
Well, we do projects that are literally 8 units up to, I think our largest, we've done a rehab that's over 120 and 180 units.
I'm leading you down the wrong path. So what I'm trying to say is, if you had of the other 60, 70 unit projects that you've done, what's the average amount of commercial space that would be associated with them? I'm just trying to get a picture if this is something normal or if it's something quite different from what you usually do.
No, and I know where you're going, and unfortunately I don't have that information right at my fingertips. We don't do a ton of 12,000 square foot commercial pads. We're working with commercial brokers and the landowner to get that built.
Okay. So this is a little larger than normal, but not an unusual project.
The project is not larger than normal at all.
No, I mean the commercial component is larger than normal, but
Yeah,
not unusual for what you do.
Absolutely, I would agree with that.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I just have a curiosity question. What is the cost per unit on this?
Cost per unit. Just over $200,000 per unit, which is quite low in the county of Santa Barbara, based on other tax credit projects that have been awarded. Okay. I know. It's quite high when you think about it, as $200,000 per unit. In a low-income housing tax credit development, there is an enormous amount of soft costs that are associated with tax credit financing. Could
you define those soft costs?
Sure. And first, if you don't mind, I want to explain the quick and dirty on tax credits, because it's difficult to understand, and don't get in the business because it causes a lot of brain damage. I've been in it for 10 years, and sometimes I wonder what happened to me. The way tax credits work is each state is awarded a certain number of tax credits from the federal government based on their population. So California has X amount of tax credits that they award competitively to different developers or to different projects. Then investors who have high profits purchase those tax credits, cents on the dollar. Anywhere, at certain times it's 75 cents. When the tax credit regulations first came into play in the early 80s under President Reagan, it was like in the 50s and 60 cents on the dollar. It got up in California over $1. Investors were investing over $1 for the dollar. And now we're back down anywhere from 80 to 90. And a few years back, we were way down in the high 60s and 70s. They invest, they get a tax credit, not a tax break, but a tax credit to invest capital in affordable housing. So that soft financing that you asked about goes to obviously architects and engineers, designers, taxes, insurance, recording, attorneys, not only for typical land deal attorneys, but also for the investors who ultimately are in charge of meeting their affordability for the next 55 years. So these investment teams from Citibank or Boston Capital, big investment companies have teams of people, including attorneys and borrower fees and all these things, to make sure that we are complying with the tax credit codes so that the federal government never goes to take their tax credits away in the next 55 years. Well, I should say in the next 55 years of affordability and the next 10 years of taxes is how the equity investors, when they get their credits for 10 years. So those are the bulk of the soft costs, and then, of course, developer overhead and profit, which I know is always kind of a difficult one for people to talk about, but I'll be frank. I mean, we're developers. We take on a lot of risk. We've been involved with this project for 2 years and haven't made a penny. So that's kind of the bulk sum of the soft costs. Does that help?
Councilmember Acosta.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for your presentation. Do you have a copy of the letters from the local banks?
I do.
Can you please see those? Also, in the slide, you mentioned that the units would be at 60%, the unit rents would be at 60% of the area median income based on the county. Is that correct? Would any be at any lower than that, 50%, 40, 30%?
Yes, and I realize that the letters are in my bag, so I'll have to go grab them.
Okay, during public comment, please do. Okay, and so would the breakdown of the units be consistent with the application for the tax credit allocation committee?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that
Absolutely.
you would. Okay, so I just I was. What's that? Sure. There was 5 one-bedrooms at 30%. 11 one-bedrooms at 40%, 22 one-bedrooms at 50%, and 16 one-bedrooms at 60%. 1 two-bedroom at 30%, 1 two-bedroom at 40%, 2 two-bedrooms at 50%, and 2 two-bedrooms at 60%. And all that means is the rents are going to be charged based on income. And I know that this isn't what we're speaking of today, so I just wanted to make this statement and somewhat refute, I think, one of the arguments that was made as part of the basis of this appeal, and that is that the seniors would then have more disposable income by moving here. But looking at the proposed rents, they're pretty on par with those of the current market, and that's due to the median income in the city of Lompoc being much lower than the median income at the county. So what we consider affordable housing in Lompoc is the majority of housing on the market right now. So I'm not convinced that they would have more disposable income. I just wanted to make that statement. I know that's not what we're considering this evening, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you for these letters.
I don't see any other lights lit, so let's go to public comment. Who would like to talk to us about this? Do
you have an extra card I can fill out for you? Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Mary Saladino of Lompoc, and when I first heard the beginning of this comment, the first thing I'm thinking about is if this company is unable to complete the original agreed-to proposal in a one-phase project, I would suggest that no construction begin, rather than have a long, drawn-out, three-phase project with no end in sight. Who knows what the future holds? We could be caught in worse situations than having nothing at all. And they seem to be suggesting that the tax benefit would be great for the city. Of course it would. But they also say that they have to fight in order to keep the tax revenue for the city. So I suggest that it's a risky business. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Darrell Burgess. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Honorable Councilman.
Darrell, you got to twist the mic up. You're not close enough. Or get shorter.
All right, one of the
Thank
two. Okay. I really wasn't going to say anything because I thought the purpose of this was to discuss phasing, but I was really unclear as to why the proponents for this went through a lengthy discussion about the project because it seems it has no relevance.
They have the ability to present what they wish to present. That's the way we do it.
Okay. Well, it just doesn't seem...
We only consider what we need to consider.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to point that out, that most of what they've said doesn't really seem relevant to the discussion this evening. I also agree with Council Member Costa that I doubt that putting these low-income housing, 60 units in here is going to do much to support the commercial once it's developed there. That's assuming that the rest of us here that live in Lompoc don't have any income. We do. I think that we're capable of supporting the commercial, and I can't see how adding another 60 low-income housings in that area with people with limited incomes is going to help support the commercial and make it possible to build. I can't see how it makes commercial any more favorable to be built down there either. I just don't see that concept at all. Let's see, I guess the other thing is it's not so bad to have something vacant, because as long as it's vacant, you have infinite possibility as to what can be built there. Once it's built there, it's built. And the point is it's going to be there probably for 55 years or longer until it's raised. So I think that we need to make a decision as to what we want there, not just put something there so we have something there. I disagree with the concept that something is better than nothing in that circumstance. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Robin Hayhurst. I'm Executive Director of the Santa Maria Valley Contractors Association. I've been familiar with PAC West due to their work in Santa Maria, which has been above the pale as far as how wonderfully it's turned out. But beyond all that, I have to tell you, just as a personal aside, it's gratifying for me to be in this room and hear you guys addressing Good Samaritan as a blessing. I was president of that board during the time that none of your names were up here then, but when this room was extended all the way to the back, there was 400 or 500 people in here, standing room only, and we were trying to bring to Lompoc some of the experiences that we had in Santa Maria and put them on West Ocean for the benefit of the community. And we had everybody and their brother telling us that wasn't going to be what it was going to be at all. And it's kind of like it feels so good for you guys to know what Good Sam is really all about finally now. And I could say the same thing about PAC West and the senior housing project. People make assumptions about how finances work when they don't obviously have a lot of knowledge of how this stuff works. There is a major tenant looking at the 1,200 square feet. And Mayor, to answer your question, Rancho Hermosa in Santa Maria has 42 units and 9,000 square feet of commercial that were built concurrently. That's just up the street if you want to go see it, and it's a beautiful project. Those pictures actually, I have to say, don't do it justice. We've got this miracle of the fact that these tax credits came through, and and we all know that there's a lot of ancillary issues here that really have absolutely nothing to do with the phasing of this project, all kinds of old feelings that filter up. But I would have to say, Dr. Burgess, that the fact that even though that land is kept as pristine as possible, it's a dumping ground now for people. And I don't see how this project be considered anything. It's not anything. It's a wonderful, viable project. The infrastructure will go in. It's in PAC West's best interest to make sure that the commercial piece comes along as soon as possible. I'll tell you that they use local contractors very effectively on their Santa Maria projects, and I know because I was intimately involved with it and had a lot to do with Rancho Hermosa, because as you know, that was also attached to Good Samaritan. I'll be back here tomorrow morning at Alan Hancock's campus in Lompoc because I'm working with the Environmental Training Center there, working on construction in this area and the green components that we bring into buildings here. We're vested here. PAC West is so far superior to what you guys think of as greedy developers and people that are trying to rip you off. This reminds me so much of the Good Sam conversation. It's frankly deja vu all over again. And if you made the unfortunate move of compromising this project because of the fact that the economy's tanked and the commercial piece isn't fully together yet, the miracle of those tax credits goes away. So maybe Mr. Burgess wants to look down the hill at an empty lot full of whatever people dumped on it that week. But I'm telling you, this is a really great group of people that are trying to bring you something, the same way Good Sam was. Don't let all this naysaying stuff, besides the fact that the Planning Commission was operating outside the law and what they were doing, it's not entirely defensible. There's no real findings there. And I would defy you to say that there are. And I think it's going to be Lompoc's loss if you let some old negativity attach itself to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Rocky Boyce, and I represent Sahara Construction and the Santa Maria Valley Contractors Association. I worked very successfully with Pacific West Builders on the Rancho Hermosa project. Very beautiful project. We did very well on it, employed a lot of people, hired a lot of people. Really looking forward to doing something successful here in Lompoc. I've got a few employees that live here in Lompoc, and I really am not looking forward to laying them off. I'm also looking forward to hiring some more guys that were at one point some of my mentors, and they also reside in Lompoc. I've also spoken with Pacific West management in regards to using and finding some more local contractors. So I can't say enough good things about Pacific West as a developer. I've worked with several, if not hundreds of developers, and these guys are extremely professional, extremely efficient, and their finishes from an architectural standpoint are almost second to none. So I guess that's it.
Thank you for making the long trip over the hill. And next, please.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Dwayne Holmdahl, a Lompoc City resident. It's very interesting sitting out and listening. I wasn't going to say anything, but we don't have any need for any more commercial buildings at this moment. There's enough empty ones in this town instead of forcing somebody. When you're talking about phasing, a lot of times it's more than one project, but you're talking about leaving the commercial out until there's time to use it, but they're going to build 60 units. Common sense is build the units. Clean up that eyesore. In other words, say, well, I can sit there and everybody can look at it, but that is the entrance to Lompoc. And everybody says, well, when are you going to do something about it? Is clean it up. Well, you've got somebody who wants to do that. It'll be a nice-looking place there. It meets all the other codes. So it's been an interesting concept on this corner. The planning commissions have denied it. The council has overridden the planning, 3 times now? And I wonder who's on what page. And I think that you better take a look at this because you're looking down the road. If you want that to look nice, and eventually, because we're going to trying to bring people into town, and let them look at that as they come into town in that facility, it'll sure make a big difference in the future. So all you're building the units, and when that commercial units are built is only when it's profitable to build. Common sense is you're not going to build it unless it's profitable. If it's already done, all the prelim work is done, then that's fine, and then you can go ahead and build it. But all you got to do is drive around town and see how many empty buildings you have. Why force somebody to build something that you don't need right at this time? Thank you.
Okay, last chance. No, Mary, you only get one crack at this. Sorry.
I was just wondering why.
Anyone else? Going? We're going to get you back in a second, don't worry. Going, gone. Okay. Now come on down. Yeah. All right.
So, since I've been involved with this project, I got married before I was involved with the project, and then I got pregnant and had a baby and had maternity leave, and now I'm here again. So, forgive me for what I'll call baby brain when I was sitting there and not hearing what was going on at the moment. So I apologize, but it's clearly been an important piece of me and in my career, and Pacific West, I think, has, like I said, we've been involved since 2010. And have worked consistently to get the financing for this project put together. And why we can't do it as one phase right now? Well, first, I'm not going to sit up here and say we can't, because we want to always work as creatively as possible to make projects move forward with our partners, and we feel like the City of Lompoc is our partner. It will make it extraordinarily difficult in the sense that I don't know how creative we can get if we can't find financing for those commercial pieces right now before March 26th. If we don't finance, if we have to build it all at once, we will most likely lose our financing through the Tax Credit Allocation Committee at the State of California. That's nearly $9 million in equity for a $12.5 million residential project. I have no idea if this city would ever get that money back. What I mean by that is, when you're working for tax credits and affordable housing in the county of Santa Barbara, you compete against all the other communities in the coastal region. Many of those communities have a lot more money than this particular city, because they're larger. They have more amount of home funds. They have, redevelopment agencies is not an issue right now, but They have more housing trust funds, all different avenues to fund these projects. Lompoc just doesn't have that. This project was literally last on the list for competing for tax credits. And lo and behold, all the other projects in Santa Barbara County, in other coastal areas, got ticked off because threshold items were missing, or they didn't have their social services in order, or they didn't offer the proper site amenities. They were too far from a hospital, too far from parks, all these other threshold bases that the tax credit committee closely looks at. So what I'm saying is we would love to be able to build this in one phase. The economy is not letting us. Our financing is not letting us use it for the commercial space. We are doing everything we can, including stubbing out utilities, which will then help build to suit, which I heard people say, why build an empty shell? And that's what we would be doing if we could figure it out. It's like, well, we want to bring the right user in. We want to build to suit. And in order to do that, they need to be able to get financing. And you'll see in those letters from the banks that they're more likely to finance a project that they can build to suit. They're more likely to finance a project after they have a prospective tenant, all these different things. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. But I wanted to address that issue.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you. The project in Santa Maria, Rancho Hermosa, you had 42 units and 9,000 square feet, so a little parallel.
Yeah.
47?
Yeah.
Okay. So could you comment on the ability to finance the commercial component there? What made that different from this project?
Well, Rancho Hermosa was awarded tax credits in 2009. Does that sound right? Tax credits can never be used to fund commercial. How we did it there was we had interested commercial tenants up front that were able to finance it. We kind of minimized the building, and they were able to finance that part of the building. I mean, that's the short of it. It was a different market.
Yes.
And the services that were required to serve that population helped fill those commercial spaces.
Congratulations on the baby.
It's an exciting project.
Good segue. All right.
The baby?
Oh, and the baby. They're both babies. Both Santa Maria and Lompoc are babies to me. And my little boy.
I think I'm thinking of the little boy. Congratulations. Okay. Who's next? Councilmember Costa behind the water jug.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. I actually have a few questions. So as you mentioned, I did go through these letters, and there really was only one issue that they had, and that was they would be able to do the financing if you found a pre-qualified tenant, some kind of committed tenant, an anchor tenant. That's really what's stopping this here. Now, there was somebody from the public who mentioned a tenant, and I may have misheard that. Is there currently no tenant interested in the commercial properties?
No, there's currently discussions with tenants for both the 12,000 square foot property and the 2,500 square foot property. I really can't disclose that at this point. It's preliminary, and it wouldn't be proper. So there are discussions with different commercial tenants for those spaces. There's always been interest in the site. And as a matter of fact, in 2010, I believe the council even had a letter of interest from a commercial user at that point. Things have changed since then, obviously.
There was a local, if I may, there was a local physician that signed a letter of intent.
It was a healthcare related use, yes.
So even with that possible interest, you're not confident in getting the financing before it would be needed to complete in one phase?
Our company doesn't get the financing. The user gets the financing. So right now, I mean, I don't know if any of the letters discuss it, but I think they want 40, 50% down, which is when there's almost a 30% vacancy rate in the city of Lompoc right now. There's not a market for financing new commercial projects right now.
Okay, and the other question I had for you is in the Rancho Hermosa project, and you may not have this on hand, do you know the city of Santa Maria's contribution to that project?
I don't have it on hand. Do you all recall?
It was nearly
And did they use any other funds to put towards this project? Okay.
They don't have any RDA.
Right. So I just wanted to make the statement that you said the city of Lompoc doesn't have the money, but we have committed at $1.3 million to this project, which is more than Santa Maria, and Santa Maria is a much larger city. So I just wanted to clear that up for the public record. Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've been working on the project for a long time, pre-baby. I've been on this project for a long time, too. It started when I was on the Planning Commission years ago, and now almost this full term as a council member. I'm going to go over some of my thoughts on the project. As I said, probably during the Planning Commission and my time on the council, this is a beautiful project. My feeling, it's just in the wrong location. Now, I know we're not talking about that tonight. That's not going to be the basis of my decision. I just want to go through some of my thoughts. A beautiful project, and I commend you on that. I voted to deny the project originally on both, probably on the Planning Commission and the City Council. It was based on public safety and public health, public safety. That has not changed. As a matter of fact, I feel this, and one of the conditions I have to consider again is public safety. This is going to exacerbate public safety on that corner. At the time, pre-hospital, I'll explain what I'm saying. At the time of the project, that corner was the second busiest intersection in the city of Lompoc. Now I believe with this project, it's probably the busiest. One of the conditions I have to consider is public safety. I believe that that project there is not safe for, I thought it was not safe then, and now, and you tried to convince me last time, that with the with the commercial on that project, the residents there were going to be able to shop locally. There may be a drugstore, there may be a doctor, there may be a dentist, there may be a hairstylist. Now, there will be no commercial on that lot. The residents there, 60 units, some of them 2-member units, are going to be traveling off there. And where do they go? I'm assuming these are still elderly, low income, and is there still a handicap unit or handicapped project involved as well? Anyway, difficult transportation. There was no place for them to go before, and now they're going to be forced off that property. They're going to go maybe across Ocean Avenue in a busy intersection to go to the little mini mart over there. There's no other market for them to go to around there. And the reason I say it's going to exacerbate, well, I did tell you the reason it's going to exacerbate it, there's no place for them to go. They're stuck on that corner. These are elderly people, many of them, probably I'm going to assume, walking slow, maybe in the motorized wheelchairs. I still feel that this is going to be a very dangerous situation to public safety, and by phasing it in, it's going to make it even worse. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I just have a couple of thoughts on this, and this is the second project that's been phased in the last couple of months, and I'm just very concerned about a precedence that we're going to start. I mean, thinking out to the future on this, we approved Santa Rita, now we're being requested on Cypress. What's next? Is all of our projects going to become phased? They come in whole and then leave in pieces. I'm concerned with that. The other thing that I'm really concerned with on this is the mitigation to offset the low income was supposed to be the tax revenue for the commercial property. So in the interim now, we're going to have our tax base made up. This property goes off of the tax rolls. We bring low income in. The mitigation was supposed to be the commercial property on this. Once again, we're going to have taxpayers making this up. And I have concern with that, but I understand it. I understand that this project was already approved and we're considering only the phasing of it, and business-wise, I can see exactly why you're pursuing this and why you're not pursuing the commercial part of it. The one concern that I really have with phasing is I want to look at Santa Rita. It's residential. They're phasing in the residential. You drive by there and look, there's a fence with mountains of dirt in it. I understand you're going to put pads and do all of this, but it's still the perception that you see when you go by. And then we always get the story, local hires, we're going to hire local, and then we see trucks from everywhere outside of our valley here doing the work. So I don't know. I hate overturning a planning commission decision. I just am looking at this really hard right now.
One question that I didn't ask you earlier, the money that we had allocated for this was from our redevelopment agency, and we were not at a draft document point where your funds were protected. Is that going to have an effect on you, or do you have a way around that?
We'd like to think we have a way around it. I mean, I'll be honest. The debacle with the redevelopment agencies right now is causing a lot of affordable housing developers to scratch their head and try to figure out ways to continue to move projects that are so close to continue to move forward. We're struggling with this project, and we're struggling with other projects, as are many other affordable housing developers in the state. We're currently working with both the attorney and the staff here to try to work a way to close on our loan in a manner that meets the law, and a lot's to be determined based on the new legislation that's out there, extending timelines requesting to extend timelines for redevelopment agency demise. So there's a lot of unknowns. They're really, in my mind, they're really two separate issues. But we think that we have a really good relationship with the community at this point, and we'd like to think that we can continue to move forward. Can I speak to a couple other statements that were made? Sure. One of the things that tax credit developments are judged on is their ratio of public funds to total development costs. So when I said that Lompoc doesn't have a lot of money in the I didn't mean to infer that they don't have a lot of money in the deal. What I meant to infer was, based on the competition of tax credits, the amount of soft money, i.e. from local sources, compared to the total development cost, that ratio is where you score high in the award for tax credits, along with other things, many other things. Typically, this community does not get multiple tax credit projects awarded to it. So this is a very atypical situation. That was my only, that was where I was going with that comment, and I wasn't completely clear. Yes, this development will meet all accessibility and handicap codes. It's for seniors ages 55 and older. So certainly some folks there will be handicapped, and some folks there will maybe not have the best eyesight and struggle with walkers. And some folks there will be 55 years old with a partner that's maybe 50 years old. So I just want to be clear that we're not building an elderly development, I wouldn't call it. I would call it at least my folks would call it a housing for baby boomers. So I want to set the stage there and what the reality looks like. The idea that every project Lompoc does is going to be phased, and I don't know the full history of all of your developments, and I'm not going to claim to. I do know Santa Rita. Santa Rita was phased for the exact same reasons. It's my understanding, and please pipe in, financing reasons that our project was, in that by March 26th, both Santa Rita and Cypress Court, if they don't have their construction loan closed and their building permits in hand, will lose the availability to get tax credits and sell them on the market. So on March 26th, we will lose $9 million in equity to this project, this $12.5 million residential project, plus the commercial piece. And, the case for jobs that I tried to discuss earlier.
Okay. Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are supposed to find some impacts that will result from the phasing. That's really the only way that we have to make a decision here. I've heard from the council members, I've heard from the public. I'm having a hard time finding an impact. I understand Councilmember Lingle talked about that he feels that site is unsafe. However, that site was approved by the fire department and the police department requirements. So the city has a process, and if the process says that we meet the requirements and it is approved based on those requirements, then it is only a personal opinion to think that that's safe or unsafe. There is no legal binding behind that says it is unsafe. So I have a hard time saying that that's an impact that is going to result from the phasing. I also have a hard time that setting a precedence is an impact. Precedents are set all the time. Are those real impacts that we can make a legal decision saying that because we're setting a precedence, that's an impact and we should not allow this phasing? So I find myself, against the wall from the point of view strictly the legality of denying or approving this project. There is no legal reason that we can deny it, as far as I can see it. And if somebody can come forward and really provide a good case that this will be an impact, I will listen, regardless of my personal opinion, whether I like the project or I don't like the project. I will listen to a real impact and make a decision based on that. But unfortunately, I don't hear it here tonight.
Councilmember Costa?
I think
You were behind the water jug, too. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you. Councilmember Martiner, I understand your situation, and I want to speak again on the safety issue of this project. Yes, the fire department gave the blessing, the police department gave the blessing, but you are an elected official, elected by the community, to use your judgment on this. The police department, the fire department look at codes and make sure that there's enough fire escapes, there's enough fire sprinklers, there's enough access to the facility. You as a council member, myself as a council member, have to look beyond that. And I don't think when you look at that lot, with 60 plus elderly people, granted they're not 80, 90, 100-year-old people, they're people probably the age of most of us in this room. However, there's no place for them literally to go. The nearest park is up 7th Street. Many of us can't walk up 7th Street. It's a very steep incline. They certainly can't go up there with a walker, a cane, a wheelchair. There's no pharmacy for them to go to. There's no, there's a restaurant down Ocean Avenue, the Budget Cafe. Go down there. There's no sidewalks along there. They're going to be walking along the street. Realistically, you as a council member have the responsibility to the community and to the citizens there for safety. And I say that this is a safety issue. And it has been exacerbated by not having any commercial on that property. As a matter of fact, when you got the funding, I met Bruno at some facility. I congratulated him. Okay, we're going to finally get the empty piece of property built out. I know. Even though I didn't like I like the project. I love the project. Okay, wrong location. Not really. Yes, I do. I do like the project. I'd love to have you move it someplace else. I congratulate Bruno. We're finally going to get it built out. That was when there was going to be some commercial on there, that the people that had no place to go could get a bite to eat. I've been through it. They'll get their nails done or whatever. Councilmember Costa, you said if someone can convince you, I'm trying to convince you right now. There is a public safety issue. That is one of the conditions that you are allowed to look at this. You are allowed to look at public safety as a reason for denial. So you ask for someone to try to convince you. I'm trying to convince you for the sake of your constituents that are going to be jeopardized by this project. Thank you.
And now Councilmember Costa.
Councilmember Lingo, I think you meant Councilmember Martner. You said Councilmember Costa, just for the record. And my apologies if I can ask you one more question, and my apologies for misunderstanding your statement previously. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, which I may be again. Your argument is that not the money that we're putting into the project, but other. Can you restate what you stated prior about Lompoc not having a lot of money in that sense?
Sure. There is a competitive process on how the tax credit allocation committee awards tax credits to projects. There's an application process. You have to meet a number of threshold items. I would say 99.9% of developments that go in for affordable housing tax credits meet all of the threshold items. They score full points on their tax credit application. Then the tax credit committee looks at a tiebreaker ratio. The tiebreaker ratio incorporates a number of different things, but most simply stated, it is a ratio of soft public funds to total development costs. So the more expensive a project, the less public funds, you have a low ratio, you have a low tiebreaker score. The lower your tiebreaker score, the less likely you will be to be funded.
The soft public funds being monies devoted to the project?
That are paid back in a certain way. When I say soft funds, I mean not your typical permanent lender. I mean your redevelopment agency funds, your home funds, most housing trust funds, the $1.1 million that the city has in this deal currently, those would be soft funds. So when we applied for tax credits, our tiebreaker was, I think, in the 20 to 30%, it was in the high 20s range, like a 28% tiebreaker. Other projects that we were competing against in this coastal region, Santa Rita included, tiebreaker was in the high 80s? High 80s? We knew Santa Rita was going to get funded. I sat in a meeting, with John, and we strategized, and we were like, okay, Cypress Court's not going to get funded. We don't have that tiebreaker score. We don't have the soft funds. We don't have project-based vouchers. We don't have a loan from the Housing Authority. We don't have these other means, nor does the city or the county home program at the time have these other means to increase our tiebreaker. Santa Rita is going to move forward. We know they're going to get funded because they have this high tiebreaker. All these other projects that had a tiebreaker between ours, say 28% don't quote me on that, but for the purpose of this conversation, and Santa Rita's tiebreaker in the high 80s, all got ticked off the list because they didn't meet those threshold items for whatever reason. So lo and behold, last place in the region, in the competition, we get awarded funding. That just doesn't happen. It's like, it just doesn't happen. So does that help? It's this idea of soft funds that aren't paid back, that are paid back through residual receipts, which is cash flow.
And thank you for that. And congratulations, of course. I think that's very exciting that you received that. That's phenomenal.
Hopefully we can bring it to fruition.
Now, the other question I have is for staff, so thank you for that. I think that Councilmember Starbuck brought up a good point that was in the back of my mind, and I'm glad that he mentioned it. And I was wondering if you could speak to the fact that a mitigation measure of the property taxes being taken off the rolls for the residential piece, the mitigation measure was having a commercial component. Is that correct?
There was discussion of it. It was not a mitigation measure.
So, but was part of the argument stated in that manner?
I went through the minutes and looked at the projects today, and as Ms. Wortman just indicated, it was part of the agency approval process, but it wasn't part of the land use, the planning project. The conditional use permit, that didn't have anything to do with that.
Will this then affect, the phasing then affect that? What the decision was based upon for the redevelopment?
Linda can probably address that for you.
Thank you.
Initially, the project was approval at the redevelopment agency stage was mitigated by the fact that the current property tax value on that site was going to increase with the commercial development. So even though the housing portion was going to be taken off the tax rolls, the commercial development would increase the tax revenue on that site.
But with the phasing as proposed,
it's hard to say. When the development is constructed, then the value will be there. At this point, the tax base is going to remain on the rolls, but it will not be increased by the construction or the new building. The assessed value won't increase until the development is done. But at this point, we're not losing any additional monies because the other parcel, it will be taken off. That parcel will remain stagnant, basically.
thank you.
Is this for you again? I'm sorry, I can't remember your name today. Shellen.
Helen with an SH.
Is this site parcelized now?
No, it's one parcel and there's a vesting map on it. And that's ultimately the idea of parceling is ultimately why we're here. I mean, there's not a condition of approval that requires the project to be phased or not phased.
Kind of our position on that is if it doesn't say it's phased, then it isn't. That's our city outlook, so.
Right, I understand.
Okay. So it's not parcelized to be able to lend against individual sections to build something, okay? So it was conceived as a single build-out when it was designed originally.
There's covenants that will be placed on it, condominium covenants that will be placed on it. So until those covenants are placed on it, it's also difficult for financing.
Have you got a third choice?
A third choice
to all or nothing? I mean, we're sitting here with, we turn you down and your whole world goes upside down, or we approve it and our whole world goes upside down.
Well, I guess what I need to do is instill confidence that the commercial development will be built. We're not trying to get out of building the commercial development.
I understand that.
But that's been brought up. I've heard at least one council member say we don't want to just have residential uses there. The climate for commercial development, and we heard a member from the public, it's very poor here right now. It will get better. I mean, everyone, right? It has to.
Can't fall off the floor.
We have interest in that site. It's close to the hospital. It's close to residents. It's in the gateway to the community. I mean, it's a great commercial site, hence the zoning of commercial. I mean, it's a good site. We have people that are interested. They will be more interested once they see a beautiful project on the site. They have roughly $200,000 to $250,000 of improvements on the site. All their parking, new paving, new grading, sewer, water, power, cable to the building. I mean, it'll be stubbed out at the building because we want to build a suit, and we're not going to know exactly what that looks like. But we're making an investment in the future of that commercial. It's not going to be a residential only development. So if I was on the council, I would think, in thinking about the phasing of it, I would think, well, what's better? To have nothing there and maintain to be a vacant site, underutilized, in hopes that maybe this developer will stick around and maybe this developer will get affordable housing tax credits at a future, or move forward with 60 units in hopes that the commercial development will come in the, hopefully near future.
No third choice.
Throw something out at me. I don't know. I'm not thinking of it, but I've had baby brain.
Three baby brains. In a day that passed, there would have been a completion bond, but you and I both know that the cost of those completion bonds is absolutely idiotic today. So that's not a viable alternative. So what would be an alternative that would give us, you agree to build some portion of it and we give you a temporary pass on part of it, or what could we do that would solve both of our problems? Because I don't want to see your project go down, but I don't want to go home at the end of tonight and feel like I didn't protect the citizens of Lompoc. And I have kind of the same concerns that you've heard from everybody else. And don't take it personally. You seem like a wonderful person. But you don't have ultimate control, and I think we've all been down the road of seeing something left behind. And that's our problem.
I think that Lucille spoke a little bit to some of the city's options that they had in giving a deadline. It's difficult to enforce. Give us. I don't know what the carrot is, right? Give us 2 years to develop this phase 2 and phase 3, and then what? I don't know.
I don't know. I was hoping you'd have ideas. You got somebody in the back row waving at you. Absolutely.
And I can ask a question of staff as well.
Sure. Let's do the staff questions while you guys chat.
Councilmember Lingle, did you want? Councilmember Lingle had his light on. Did you want?
And there's no excuse this time. No, it wasn't the water pitcher. Sorry about that.
Actually, I have a question for Ms. Breeze. Lucille, did I hear you in your report saying that the Colt bus stop was no longer going to be at that location?
The route has been changed.
I'm sorry?
Yes, the route has been changed.
Okay, so I just want to add again, the ability for the people to get off of that piece of property. The Colt system is no longer there, so.
Sorry, the Colt system is still there. The need for a bus stop on the site is no longer needed because the Colt system is in the vicinity. The Colt bus goes down Ocean.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
As I understand it, Lucille, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've been on maternity leave, but my understanding is the requirement for the Colt bus to be on site was because the bus stops weren't as close to the site as needed.
Yep.
The requirement for the bus stop to be on site has been removed because the Colt's route has changed and is now encircling the site moreover.
Okay. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. A statement made by a citizen in a letter that we received, and this is going to be a question for staff, that if the residential portion is developed first and the commercial portion isn't developed in a timely manner, the project would not fulfill a designation requirement as a residential commercial. Is this correct? It was a statement in a citizen's letter, and I was just curious if that was correct. Or rather, and otherwise put, if for some reason the commercial component is not built, what is the reprimand that would take place in that case? Is that another issue where there's nothing enforceable?
I think where she's going, Lucille, is when you talked earlier about the covenant's not the right word, but that if you have a condition of approval that says something has to be built at such and such a time, then it isn't built, and the issue of enforceability is quite different. I think that's what she's wanting you to comment on. Am I going the right direction?
Correct.
Okay.
It is true that a condition could be put on to require some sort of, that the building permits would have to be pulled within a certain amount of time. However, how you would implement that, how you would basically force someone to pull building permits for an additional project or a building, I don't know how that would be implemented. And the project, the way that it was originally approved by the council both times, was the conditional use permit allowed the residential to be constructed, and there was a commercial component that was part of it. So it was a single development. When the applicant was awarded the tax credits, they came to staff and asked to have construction phasing, and this is why we're before the council this evening.
Understood.
Shalene?
So the third option that we're trying to come to, the 12,000 square foot building is on the more interior of the site. That's a much more difficult building to spec out, like initially, just to get building permits, because the use there there'll likely be multiple tenants. There's a lot of different ways to build that shell. The building closer to 7th and Cypress is a much smaller building. The shell is a much more simple commercial shell. So the third option could be to require the project to pull building permits, as we're going to do for the residential units, by March 26th, and then I think we would need a little bit of time, or I would request a little bit more time, but maybe 2 extra months, 8 additional weeks, so the end of May, to pull the permit on the 2,500 square foot building, and that would just allow our designers. They've been really focusing on the residential units to meet the tax credit requirement, and haven't focused on the design of the commercial space as much. So I think that that's a third option that the council could consider.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Martin.
could we get a slide that shows what we're talking about?
Mr. Mayor, and through the council, as a nuance to what was just suggested, I would think it would be better to not have it be the timing on the pulling of the permit, but actually time it so that there's more time given to the actual issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And maybe you could even include that the project, that commercial property, needs to be very far along in its construction before the certificate of occupancy is issued for the residential.
So the residential is, excuse me.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The 60 residential units is this building 2. The 2,500 square foot building I was referring to is this building 1. And I think we'd be amenable to the certificate of occupancy requirement. This building here is a multi-story building, and it's a lot harder to build the shell of a multi-story building without knowing the use, because you don't know where they want the interior framing, what types of use they want, what types of plumbing, so on and so forth, where the smaller building would be much less costly for us to pull a permit on and design, and we would also have a lot more flexibility just generally in the size of the building.
What's the green area to the left of Building 1? Just spare land?
Yeah, spare land. Initially, our development actually, when we went in for the CUP that decreased both the commercial space and the number of residential units, initially this building was larger. We decreased the size of it in order to meet better parking ratios. So yes, it's open space.
Okay, let's take a couple-minute break, because I've got to talk to the city attorney and make sure I understand something. Okay, who'd like to speak next? Council members?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's time to call the question.
Okay, which question do we want to call? Because they presented us with the second alternative. We want to talk about that alternative, or we want to go with a yes, no?
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the council uphold the Planning Commission's decision of December 14th, 2011, to deny the construction phasing by directing staff to prepare and return with a resolution delineating its findings.
And a second. Going, gone. Okay, done with that. So let's have a little discussion of an alternative, which would be that perhaps there was a requirement that the shell of the commercial building be complete prior to receiving the occupancy certificates for the residential building. That would be the building in the front identified as 2. 1, sorry, thanks. How does anyone feel about that? Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good compromise. And I think that is the best that we can do right now, having listened to the concerns and having the developer be willing to actually build the commercial component. So I'd be supporting that motion.
Okay, next. Everybody weighed in. You want to wade in next, Councilmember Costa? Give us your thoughts. Come on, you guys. You know I love to build consensus.
It still doesn't satisfy my concern with public safety. I mean, it's a very small portion. Those people are still going to be stuck on the island there, and I still have a very big concern for that. So I would not be in favor of it.
Councilmember Starbuck?
I like that mitigation because it at least moves it into where some of the tax generation I just worry about is throwing into a project that has no design now and then putting the condition, the certificate of occupancy based on that. I don't know with the commercial rental market like it is and commercial construction cost, it's, I'm kind of confused in thinking that right now.
Okie doke, Councilmember Costa.
Councilmember Starbuck, what would you prefer? Because you would prefer that it would all be built at one time?
No, I understand why it can't be, and I really appreciate the developer coming back to us and saying that, rather than just phase in, that we would go ahead and put some of the commercial in. I just wonder about rushing into the commercial. Currently, there is no design on the commercial property there. There is still design? Okay. I personally, I think it would be a good compromise on a phasing that we're discussing. The project itself is done. It's just the phasing, and if it would make me feel a lot better to at least have that commercial building, the residential, and it will provide sort of a blockage of the big empty. I'm leaning that way, I think.
Would you guys put sod down instead of hydro seed on the vacant pad so we get a little better look out of that? And then a 200-foot redwood tree? Just kidding. I'll donate it if you plant it. Okay. Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Mary Lynn. It's unfortunate that we are in the market that we are in and we're facing these challenges. I would like to restate for the public, as I'm sure they already know, that this project is already approved, and even if we didn't grant this, if you found a solution, it still could go forward. So with that being said, I'm much more comfortable doing a 2-phase of sorts instead of a 3-phase, and that would mean that building 1 must be completed before a certificate of occupancy is given for building 2. Thank you.
Okay, City Attorney, would you advise that was the expedient way to guarantee results?
What I'm hearing is you'd like to have a motion that grants the appeal and provides the conditions that were listed by the staff in the staff report, and add a condition that says the C of O for the residential portion is, which is, I think it's phase 1, is not issued, whether it's temporary or permanent, certificate of occupancy is not issued until the completion of the building at the corner, which, according to the map I'm looking at, says phase 3. So we want to change the numbering, but
No, let's stick with what it says. Okay. And would you say that that requirement with regard to the certificate of occupancy is adequate security? To me, it seems that way, but I'm asking
Definitely.
your professional opinion.
Definitely.
So, Member Lingle, you know I love 5-0 votes. So is there anything that we could add to this that would make you feel better about this?
Yeah. Yeah, fire station 3.
The redwood tree. Is there anything that you would like to see added into this that would raise your level of confidence?
I will not compromise the safety of the public.
I understand that. So having said that, is there anything you would like to see added to this that would improve the safety of the public, whether or not you vote for it?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Come on down, Shailene.
I'd just like a quick clarification to make sure I understand what the attorney just represented. The conditions of approval, the certificate of occupancy for the residential building will not be granted until the shell of the phase 3 was complete.
Correct. And the shell might not include the slab. That's your option because, well, you know, frequently those buildings are built with a foundation, but the slab's not put in because you don't know where the utilities in the underground are. So I think that when I say shell, that's what I mean, and I assume that's what everybody else means, but maybe not. Okay, Councilmember Martin.
I would like to make a motion so we can move on. And the motion would be that we grant the appeal with the conditions that the staff has listed in the report and add a new condition. And the new condition is that there won't be a certificate of occupancy issued until the building that is being labeled right now phase 3 is completed as a shell.
And it's turf, not
Is
hydro
that,
seed.
my motion, is that complete?
The C of O for the residential building.
Yes, the certificate of occupancy for the residential building won't be issued until the commercial component on phase 3 is built as a shell.
And the vacant area is sod. Okay,
That's
good.
already a condition.
I didn't read that one, sorry. And a second.
I'm going to go ahead and second this.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. Do we have some more questions or discussion? Seeing none, could we vote, please? That passes 4-1. Sorry, Bob.
It's all part of the game.
slowly.
Okay, and now we have my request, so I have some things to pass out.
Mr. Mayor, before you start item 6, may I just
Absolutely.
request, if the meeting isn't going to be extended past 11, we need to do items 7 and 8 for sure tonight, because those items have to be done because of that AB X126.
I'm on a pass out, so this isn't going to take very long. These are actually things for next meeting. And we can't have next meeting unless I pass them out. So I have, as you all received the email from the city attorney, we are not able to amend the ordinance to allow the council to pass changes in the zoning ordinance without moving them through the planning commission. So I met with the planning commission chairman and we developed a schedule of meetings, and I also spoke to Councilmember Starbuck about it, getting a second opinion, and his opinion was that we should have more shorter meetings that were single focused on an individual issue with regard to both the zoning and the other issues with the general plan. And so I developed this schedule. This is an alternate Tuesday schedule for the council. And in the first round of each item, which are listed at the left, the council would receive a draft document, which I will see that we are provided with for the first 3 items, and then the staff will be taking over from there. That'll give them plenty of time. And then 2 weeks later, the Planning Commission would amend and approve that particular group of efforts. And 2 weeks after that, at our next round, it would come back to us, and we would amend and approve the final effort. And so that's the schedule that I propose, and you'll note that that's alternate Tuesdays from the ones we normally meet at to move forward on these items. And I've laid them out in the order that I discussed at the last council meeting that seemed to fit well with the council. I'm not seeking an approval of this tonight. This is still, these are items for discussion for the meeting of the 31st. Next, so that everyone has time to circulate it within the people that they want to talk to about it, there is a draft of the commercial success zone ordinances. There are 2 of them. There's commercial success zone general and commercial success zone neighborhood. I think if you don't like the name, I'm surely not married to it, but the concept of the commercial success zone is to marry all the positive aspects of the other zones that we currently have into a single zone, eliminate those things that make it difficult to move forward with development, and to simplify the process. And the one section in here that's very, very incomplete is the residential densities. We didn't get to any wording on that, but by the time we meet next time, I'll bring some more wording back on that. So there's our information for the meeting of the 31st. And I'm available for any questions, as long as we make them brief so we can move on. Any questions? Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. So the council first draft review are not meetings that are normally scheduled.
Correct, and this is broken up into much smaller increments so that the idea behind this is we would have a single subject and a short meeting rather than multiple subjects with a whole lot of people coming in and then having sequential meetings that people end up going to get to their item.
But the Planning Commission amend and approve are during their regular scheduled meetings, and the council final approval is during our regularly scheduled meetings.
No, these are all special meetings for both entities. The council final approval, if you look at that, for instance, the one for the commercial land use is February 28th, and that's when the residential land use is also coming up. But my thought there is that by the time the Planning Commission gets done with it and we interact with our planning commissioners, when it comes back to us, it should be a finished document that's nearly ready for approval and wouldn't require a lot of work. We're going to offer suggestions to the Planning Commission, then they have time to review the document and make their necessary changes, and when it comes back to us, it should be a 99% finished document.
And in that case, City Administrator, would you be comfortable with having the council final approvals during regularly scheduled council meetings?
No, these are in the special meetings.
Oh, those are additional special meetings.
No, it's in the same special meetings. It's 4 weeks later. So like this one is this one.
Oh, I see.
It's just packaged up. And the thought behind it is that when we do the final approval, there shouldn't be a great deal of effort involved in it. Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, did you mean for the last date, the 6/2, to be a Saturday?
No, that would be a typo.
Okay, so what date would that be then?
That would be...
Very final date, the last date.
The final date would be the second Tuesday, whatever that would be. What would that be, Bob?
June 12th.
Okay, so correct that to be 6/12/12, which would be a good day because that's 2 12s and that's my lucky number. Okay, any other questions so we can move along? This is the draft that we'll talk about on the 31st. The goal of this draft is for you to meet with your planning commissioner, with your other advisors, make amendments to it, and come in on the 31st so that we're ready to talk about it and make a complete draft to forward to the planning commission. And the timeline we'll vote on at the 31st meeting. That way it gives everybody time to check their calendars and make sure we're good.
Okay, I would just like to urge council to not meet once a week for the next 6 months, especially on Valentine's Day. So I would like for us to figure out another way whether we need to bundle these a little bit more so that we're meeting 3 weeks consecutively per month instead of 4.
Okay, we can discuss that at our next meeting and everybody can gain their opinion. This is just this is an idea. It's not set in cement. Bob, is your light still on? Yeah. Okay. Everybody good? Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the next item. This will be item number 7 and presented by Linda Wortman.
Honorable Mayor, council members, staff is here tonight to present a staff report for consideration of the City Council to assume the housing functions of the Lompoc Redevelopment Agency. On December 29, 2011, the California Supreme Court delivered its decision in the California Redevelopment Association vs. Monsanto's case, finding AB 1X26, the Redevelopment Dissolution Act, constitutional, and AB 1X27, the Alternate Redevelopment Payment Act, unconstitutional. This ruling by the court means that all redevelopment agencies statewide are to be dissolved under the AB 1X26. No redevelopment agency can opt into continued existence with the payment AB 127 would have allowed. As a result, the redevelopment agency will be dissolved on February 1st, 2012. The city will become the successor agency of the former redevelopment agency and will carry out the duties required to wind down the agency's affairs under AB 1X26 or AB 26. AB 26 also provides that the city may elect to accept the assets, rights, responsibilities, and obligations of the dissolved redevelopment agency with respect to housing matters. If the city does not elect to take on this responsibility, the County Housing Authority or the State Department of Housing and Community Development will take those functions. Provisions of AB 26 provides a successor agency, or the city, either 5% of the current year tax increment or a minimum of $250,000 for above debt service obligations and other enforceable obligations per year for administration of the successor agency. The bill does not specify whether these funds cover administrative costs for housing. However, just today, staff received recommendations from the California Redevelopment Association, which recommended including any administrative costs directly tied to a project with the project cost itself, not to be within the catch-all administrative budget of 5% or $250,000, which will help offset some of the city's administrative costs going forward. The agency's current housing loan portfolio consists of approximately $3 million with covenants on 265 units. The agency additionally has $1.3 million in obligated funds to Cypress Court and would restrict approximately 29 additional units. In addition to the loan covenants, the agency currently has 168 constructed units under inclusionary covenants. Including the obligated funding stated in our loan portfolio, totals $4.1 million, or actually $4.3 million with the obligated funds. And we have 462 units we currently monitor. The agency housing assets also include a vacant lot at 114 South K Street that would be transferred to the city as the successor agency. I was able to poll several agencies today, and all agencies I looked at were in fact keeping their housing functions. Or actually, the city was keeping the housing function. So it looks like the majority of cities becoming successor agencies are choosing to keep their housing function. At this time, staff recommends the City Council adopt resolution number 5762, parent 12, or provide other direction. This concludes my report, and Joe Pannoni, Brad Wilkie, and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Joe, let's assume that, because when we first looked at this, there was no possibility there was going to be any money left, and we were going to end up doing a lot of work for no money. And I think, from my standpoint, that didn't look like a very good deal with regard to the housing side. And now it looks like there might be some money, or we might retain control of our local housing funds. If, on the other hand, the state takes all of our local housing funds and leaves us holding the bag, can we untake control at some point in the future, or is this a one-time only deal?
Unfortunately, the legislation is void of any information with regard to your question. There is a statement in the legislation that says the city's general fund is never going to be obligated to pay anything that the agency otherwise had an obligation to pay. So one could argue that if there's no money, since the city money isn't encumbered, and you don't have any money to be able to pay for that administration, you could stop administering it. The problem is then there's covenants that aren't being enforced, and there's revenue that's being generated by the cash coming in from the receipts of the loans. On this one, we're going to need to be creative and proactive. And in my opinion, if we get $1 and we have $1 in our hand, we're going to make sure we use the dollar to support what we need to support here, and make someone challenge us and take that $1 away from us. And that dollar meaning the dollars we already have, and those dollars that are going to come in for rental payments.
From loan repayments.
Right.
Okay. So
that's not without risk. I want to make sure we understand that's not without risk, but it's one of those times when we're going to have to do a little self-help, I think.
And would you say, having talked to a number of other city attorneys, they have a similar view?
There's a complete confusion everywhere, yes.
Yes, there are many similar views. None of them are the same. Okay, I got it. Okay, who else has a question? Okay, how about oral communications? Anybody want to have a word on this one? Going once, going twice, gone, back to the council. How about a question, or failing at that, a motion, but a question first. Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, I'm just going to, I don't really have a question. Maybe I do have a question for Linda, because I just have a concern, especially after what we've just been through with LHCDC. And I'm not blaming our city staff for any of that. Do we have the ability to overlook, how many different properties are we going to be overlooking? Overseeing?
Currently, the agency monitors 462 projects now.
462 units.
I'm sorry, 462 units, and we do have the capacity and the staff available to do that.
Okay, because my concern is that I don't want to get us into a similar situation that we've just been in with LHCDC. Say that?
Ask how many units aren't in compliance of your 462, Linda, in a general sense? If we took LHCDC out of the picture, how many other units aren't in compliance?
All units are in compliance except for LHCDC.
Okay.
Marilyn.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're just changing is the designation. We are the redevelopment agency board, and so it's just going to be the city council doing the same thing that the redevelopment agency board was already doing. So it's just a necessary requirement. So I move that we adopt the resolution number 5762, parens 12, allowing city assumption of housing functions of the Lompoc redevelopment agency.
I second.
Okay. And do we have any further questions or discussion? Okay. Seeing none, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Okay. And now on the adoption of the revised enforceable obligation payment schedule and the recognized obligation payment schedule. Brad?
Mayor, council members, and board chair and board members, which we won't be saying that very much longer. This is actually only the enforceable obligation schedule. The draft I had put on the other one, which doesn't need to be done until next month. This enforceable obligation schedule was already adopted in August by this board. The reason we're bringing it to you again now is because of the stay that was put in place by the court that has been since taken care of by their December 29th findings. What this does is it brings forward what we had done before from July through December roughly to now is going to be January 1st until June 30th, assuming that there might be an extension of the time limits. If there's not, then it would only apply to the next couple of months. But this is updated from what we did before, has a little bit more information on it that we did not have before, but effectively it's the same report that we had approved back in August. If there's any questions, I can go forward, but I think that's effectively what we're doing.
So basically, we're doing the same thing again because of AB 126 and the court decision.
And what the court did to the timelines, exactly.
Okay. Any questions for Brad? All right. Don't go away. So we're going to open oral communications. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council on this subject? I think he's headed for the exit. He's not coming up. Gone. Okay, so now we're back to you. Are there any other questions from the council for Mr. Wilkie or Brad? Is there anything else you want to say? Life is good. Okay. Poway, yeah. Seeing no one else, could we have a motion, please? Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. I move that council and agency board adopt the amended enforceable obligation payment schedule and post a schedule on the city's website, direct staff to deliver the EOPS to the Santa Barbara County Auditor Controller, to the State Controller, and to the State Department of Finance. Authorize staff from time to time to modify the EOPS pursuant to ABX 126.
I second.
And a second, okay. And is there any further discussion? Seeing no lights, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. And do we have any written communications? Nope. Okay. Oral communications, your last opportunity. Just have 2 minutes to speak to us. Ready, set, gone. And Council Redevelopment Agency requests, comments, and meeting reports. From the right, Councilmember Lingle.
Me.
That'd be you.
Okay, let's see. This is from the 10th, I guess. I attended a ribbon cutting for the new 7-Eleven on the corner of H and Central on Saturday the 14th. I attended a special meeting of NCPA this morning. It was a phone conference, and that is it.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that several of us did attend, but it was really a great honor to go ahead and present the key to the city to Napoleon Kaufman last Friday.
Councilmember Martiner.
I attended a couple of meetings with community members regarding the situation of the shelters.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. I did as well, and I also attended the event honoring Napoleon Kaufman, and it was very lively and really a lot of fun. He's a very humble man and to be admired. So I'm glad that we were able to have that event. Also, I auditioned for the Lompoc Civic Theater, not because I'm a good actor or actress, but because I thought it would be fun, and it was a lot of fun. But more importantly, I wanted to go to meet the folks who were there and who were auditioning and speak to some of the administrators. And so they'll be requesting some time by council, so be looking out for the Lompoc Civic Theater. They're probably going to ask us to be ushers and welcomers at some of their events, so be looking out for that. And lastly, there's an event on January 28th from 1 to 4 p.m. That's hay bales and cocktails. That will be taking place on 2400 Hapgood Road at the Campbell Ranch. All proceeds benefit the Lompoc Valley and Bloom Beautification Group. I've heard that that event has been really great in the past. There's going to be an auction, a bunch of amazing wine, including some poured by myself, and some great Italian food. So hay bales and cocktails, January 28th. If you're interested in a ticket, let me know.
I'm interested. I'm letting you know because nobody's made it over. Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I did forget one event. On Friday the 13th, yes, I attended a meeting of the I believe it's the coastal chapter of League of California Cities in Thousand Oaks, and there was a city expense. I believe they paid for my dinner at that meeting.
I'd like to thank you for going so that I could go present the key to the city and hear Napoleon Kaufman's sermon, which was truly outstanding. Councilmember Lingle and Councilmember Costa were there, and
I was there.
Yeah, there's Councilmember Starbuck and Councilmember Costa. Yeah, the other guy. Yeah. Anyway, and they helped me present the key to the city, and he's a humble man and gives a great speech. I was also proud to represent the city at the quarterly awards at Vandenberg Air Force Base. As usual, the mayor from somewhere to the north of us wasn't there, and the mayor of Solvang was there, and the mayor pro tem of Buellton was there, so our area was well represented. And those are one fun bunch of guys. If you think going to a victory outreach sermon put on by Napoleon Kaufman is fun, you need to go to quarterly awards because and you'll appreciate this, the judge advocate's office, they were pounding on the table with their gavels, and the CE, which is civil engineering, were there with their school bells, and and then they had a spirit competition, and so the first sergeant and the base commander walked around the room with the big trophy, and the guys with the bells got it, but they were a lot louder. And then there was the coordinated yelling, and it's really a lot of fun. There is a change of command ceremony coming up that I will represent the city at. And then the 7-Eleven grand opening was nice. That's a local businessman expanding and putting his son in business. Also, I spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks, now that I'm well again, and by the way, thank everybody for being patient, working with city staff and the Zodoviches with regard to the Grefco facility. There are a lot of complicated issues with that, and we've had a number of meetings and worked our way through it. They will be having an event this weekend, and we help them get ready for it. So they're happy and we're happy, and they now have 2 wineries going in there, and they're talking to more. So the facility is doing really well, and if you haven't been by there, the roof's painted, the walls are painted, the old concrete's knocked out. We're working on a grade issue, and the new concrete will go in. They're putting a great deal of money into the building, so it's really nice. That's all I have to report. City Administrator, anything else from you? Oh, all right. Thank you all so very much for coming, and we are adjourned to the special meeting on Tuesday, January 31st at 7 p.m.